I told you, Mom, you're too difficult to travel with. I try so hard. It's not enough. Just go home. Maybe we should all just calm down. You're always so difficult. Oh. Does anyone know who owns this house? No, we don't. Who actually owns this place, dear?
Wait, what?
This can't be.
My daughter didn't even lower her voice when she said it. Mom, next year we're traveling without you. You're just too difficult to travel with. Lauren said it in the kitchen of a 6-bedroom vacation home overlooking the Atlantic, with her husband and friends close enough to hear every word. I was 68 years old, perfectly capable of taking care of myself, yet she spoke as if I were an inconvenience everyone had been politely tolerating. I felt the humiliation burn behind my eyes, but I didn't argue. I simply looked around that beautiful kitchen, rested my hand on the marble counter, and asked quietly, "Lauren, did anyone happen to tell you who owns this house?" The smile disappeared from her face. Before I tell you what happened next, if you've ever been made to feel like a burden by someone you love, tell me in the comments what you would have done. And let me know where you're watching from and what time it is there. If stories about family dignity and finding the courage to stand up for yourself mean something to you, please like this video and subscribe. I'd be grateful to have you here. 3 weeks before my daughter stood in that kitchen and told me I was too difficult to travel with, I was sitting at my own kitchen table in Richmond, Virginia, drinking coffee from a chipped blue mug my husband had bought me nearly 30 years earlier. The mug had a crooked white lighthouse painted on one side. David used to tease me about keeping it. "You know we can afford cups without cracks, Erica. And you know this one still holds coffee." That usually ended the argument. David had been gone for 4 years by then, but some mornings I still expected to hear him coming down the hallway. Grief does strange things to a house. It doesn't simply leave empty rooms behind. It preserves habits. His gardening gloves were still hanging beside the garage door. One of his old jackets remained in the hall closet, and every morning without thinking, I still left enough space on the kitchen table for a second newspaper. I was 68, retired and living alone in the same modest brick house where David and I had spent most of our marriage. People sometimes assumed that meant I was lonely. I wasn't. I missed my husband terribly, but I had built a life around the absence instead of allowing it to swallow me. Before retirement, I had spent more than 30 years as an office manager for an architectural firm. I had coordinated contractors, managed 6-figure project budgets, negotiated with vendors, handled payroll problems, and once kept an entire office running for 4 days after a hurricane knocked out half our systems. Yet somehow, to my daughter Lauren, I had become a woman who needed instructions for packing a suitcase. That transformation hadn't happened overnight. Lauren was 41, my only child, and I loved her with the complicated kind of love mothers rarely admit to having. I loved the woman she had become, and sometimes I missed the girl she used to be. As a child, Lauren had been fearless. She climbed trees in dresses, brought injured birds into my kitchen, and once announced at age 9 that she planned to become president because somebody needs to organize everybody. She never became president. She became a marketing director instead, which suited her almost as well. Lauren lived outside Raleigh with her husband Jason and their 2 children, 15-year-old Sophie and 10-year-old Ethan. Jason worked in commercial consulting. I never completely understood what his company did, because his explanations always involved phrases like strategic partnerships, growth opportunities, and investor relationships. He was charming, ambitious, and extremely conscious of appearances. Lauren had become more like that over the years, too. There was always a better restaurant, a better neighborhood, a better hotel, a better person to know. I noticed it, but I rarely criticized her for it. Mothers learn that unsolicited advice becomes interference somewhere around the time our children begin paying their own mortgages. That Tuesday morning, my phone rang at 9:17. "Lauren." "Mom, are you sitting down?" I smiled. "I'm 68, Lauren, not 98. But yes, I have amazing news." There was excitement in her voice, the kind I hadn't heard in months. "We're doing Hilton Head." I paused. "Hilton Head, South Carolina. Beach. Summer. Remember." Of course I remembered Hilton Head Island, but not for the reason Lauren thought. David and I had spent time there years earlier. Not every summer and certainly not recently, but enough for the name to carry memories. Salt in the air, long wooden boardwalks, David walking barefoot with his pants rolled badly above his ankles. A certain stretch of beach where he insisted sunrise looked different from anywhere else on the Atlantic. I hadn't been back since before he died. Lauren continued talking before I could respond. Jason found this incredible vacation house. Mom, you're not going to believe it. 6 bedrooms, private pool practically right on the beach. That sounds expensive. It would be. Something in her tone changed. But Jason knows someone. I leaned back in my chair. Who? One of his business connections. I don't really know the details. Somebody connected to the property management side, I think. Anyway, they had a cancellation and Jason managed to get us the house almost for free. Almost for free. David used to say those were the 3 most expensive words in the English language. What does almost mean? Lauren sighed lightly. Mom. What? Then you just be excited for 5 minutes before asking for receipts. I didn't ask for a receipt. You were about to. I laughed, trying to soften the moment. Occupational habit. Well, retire the habit. This is supposed to be fun. There it was. A small sentence. Nothing cruel. But it carried something I had begun hearing more often in Lauren's voice, the suggestion that my caution was a flaw everyone else had to accommodate. I ignored it. So who's going? Me, Jason, Sophie, Ethan. And you, obviously. Obviously. That word warmed me more than I expected. Since David died, invitations had changed. When you are part of a couple, people invite the unit. When one person disappears, sometimes everyone seems uncertain what to do with the one who remains. You want me there? Of course I want you there. I smiled. Then I'd love to come. Good. We'll drive down together. We talked another 10 minutes. Lauren described the pool, the outdoor kitchen, the upstairs balcony, and some elaborate espresso machine Jason was apparently excited about. Then she sent me the listing. I opened it while she was still talking. The first photograph showed a pale coastal house behind seagrass and live oaks. Something inside me went still. I clicked the next photograph. Wide porch, blue shutters, a brick path curving toward the side entrance. My fingers tightened around the phone. Lauren, I said. What? Send me the address. It's probably on the listing. It only shows the neighborhood. Hold on. I heard tapping. Then the text appeared. 18 Sandpiper Lane. For several seconds I didn't speak. I knew that address. I hadn't merely driven past that house. I had stood on its porch. I had watched David repair a loose section of railing there, while insisting that paying someone else to tighten 4 screws was an insult to American civilization. I remembered sitting with him on the back deck drinking iced tea. I remembered a thunderstorm rolling in over the ocean, while David stood at the windows like a little boy watching fireworks. Most clearly I remembered him calling it our quiet place. But that had been many years ago. David had owned interests in several properties with his longtime friend and business partner Robert Hale. They had invested in small commercial buildings first, then a few vacation properties along the Carolinas. I never managed those investments. David did. After his death, attorneys and accountants handled the business interests that remained, and I had deliberately kept my distance from most of it. There had been too much paperwork during the worst period of my life. Too many signatures, too many folders, too many people saying I'm sorry for your loss before asking me to initial page 7. I knew some properties had been sold. I knew others were held through Morgan Family Holdings. But I had never memorized the current portfolio. I had assumed the Hilton Head house was long gone. Mom Lauren's voice pulled me back. Yes, you disappeared. I'm here. Well, isn't it gorgeous? I looked at the photographs again. The kitchen had been remodeled. The furniture was different. The pool looked newer. But it was the same house. Yes, I said quietly. It is. I knew you'd love it. I nearly told her then. I nearly said, Lauren, your father and I knew that house. But something stopped me. Maybe it was the certainty in her voice when she talked about Jason's mysterious connection. Maybe it was the memory of David. Or maybe I simply wanted to understand what I was looking at before I said anything. When are we leaving? I asked. July 18th. I'll send you everything. Everything the itinerary. I smiled to myself. You made an itinerary for the beach, Mom, please don't start. I was teasing. Well, I just want this trip to go smoothly. Her words were innocent enough. But then she added, there'll be a few things we need to talk about before we go. What things? Nothing major. Just logistics. I heard Jason say something in the background. Lauren covered the phone for a moment. When she returned, her voice was hurried. I'll call you later, okay? All right. Love you. Love you too. The call ended. I remained at my kitchen table staring at 18 Sandpiper Lane on my screen. Then I enlarged one of the exterior photographs. There on the far edge of the porch was the railing David had repaired. I could almost see him crouched beside it again. For the first time that morning, the house around me felt painfully quiet. I walked into my study and opened the filing cabinet containing the documents I had barely touched since David's estate was settled. Insurance, taxes, investment statements, Morgan Family Holdings. I pulled out that folder and placed it on my desk. For a moment I considered opening it. Instead, I closed the drawer. Not yet. I told myself there was probably a simple explanation. Maybe David and Robert had sold the property years ago. Maybe Jason really did know the new owner. Maybe seeing that address had simply awakened memories I wasn't prepared for. My phone buzzed again. Lauren had sent another message. Can't wait. This is going to be the easiest, most relaxing family vacation ever. Below it was a photograph of the ocean view from the master bedroom. I stared at it longer than I should have, because I recognized that view too. And somewhere beneath the memories, beneath the excitement of spending a week with my daughter and grandchildren, a quiet question had begun to form. If Jason's connection had really gotten them that house almost for free, why had no one mentioned the Morgan name 2 days after Lauren invited me to Hilton Head? She called again. This time there was no excitement in her voice. There was a checklist. Okay, Mom, she said. I just want to go over a few things before the trip. I was standing in my bedroom with an open suitcase on the bed, deciding whether I needed one pair of walking shoes or two. Go ahead. First, we're trying to pack light. All of us. How light? One suitcase per person. I looked at the medium-sized suitcase in front of me. That was already my plan. Good. Because there won't be room for a bunch of extra bags. I've traveled before, Lauren. I know. I'm just explaining. That phrase irritated me more than it should have. I'm just explaining. Lately, Lauren had developed a habit of explaining ordinary things to me as though aging had erased decades of experience from my brain. How online reservations worked. Why restaurants required credit cards. How to use navigation on my phone. Once she had spent 5 minutes explaining mobile boarding passes before I reminded her that I had flown to Chicago by myself the previous month. Still, I let it go. What else? I asked. We're leaving Raleigh at 6 in the morning. That's fine. And we really can't make a lot of stops. I stopped folding a blouse. What counts as a lot? You know what I mean. I actually don't. She sighed. Jason wants to get there before traffic gets bad. Sophie gets carsick if the drive takes too long, and Ethan gets restless. So we need to keep moving. I'm capable of sitting in a car for several hours. I didn't say you weren't. You seemed concerned. Mom, please. There was that tone again. The one that suggested I was creating a problem simply by noticing how she spoke to me. I sat on the edge of the bed. Lauren, are you worried about traveling with me? No. The answer came too quickly. Then she softened it. I just know you like things a certain way. What way? You like schedules. You just told me what time we're leaving. That's different. I almost laughed. Instead, I waited. Lauren continued. And you get particular about restaurants. I have never been particular about restaurants. You always want to know where we're eating before we go. That's called making a reservation. You see that? I stared at the wall. What? You always have an answer. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. I thought about asking the obvious question. Why invite me if everything about me was already a concern? But I didn't want an argument before the vacation even started. I'll behave myself, I said lightly. Lauren didn't laugh. I'm not asking you to behave. I just want everyone to have a relaxing week. So do I. Good. Then came another rule. If we decide to change plans, I need you not to get upset. When have I gotten upset about changing plans last Thanksgiving? That surprised me. Last Thanksgiving, you were annoyed because dinner started late. Lauren, dinner started 3 hours late because Jason forgot to turn on the oven. That's exactly what I mean. What exactly do you mean you remember everything? I almost told her that remembering things wasn't yet considered a medical condition. Instead, I closed my eyes. Anything else, just try to go with the flow. I'll do my best. Thank you. She sounded genuinely relieved. That hurt more than the rules. Then I heard Jason in the background. His voice was muffled, but not enough. Did you tell her about Friday? Lauren answered him without covering the phone. Not yet. What's Friday? I asked. Silence. Then Lauren said nothing important. You just said you were going over the itinerary. It's just dinner. What dinner? Jason may have some people stop by. Friends, sort of. Jason said something else. I couldn't catch the first few words, but I heard the end clearly. As long as she doesn't make this trip about her. My stomach tightened. Lauren immediately moved away from him. Jason. What he said. Mom's on the phone. There was a pause. Then he called loudly, Hi, Erica, as if cheerfulness could erase what I had heard. Hello, Jason. Lauren returned. He didn't mean anything by that. I looked down at my suitcase. A neatly folded navy sweater lay beside the sandals Sophie had given me for Christmas. I didn't say he did. He's stressed. About a vacation, about work. Then perhaps he needs the vacation more than I do. Exactly. She seized the sentence as though I had agreed with her. So I just want things easy. Easy. I was beginning to understand that Lauren's definition of easy meant everyone adapting themselves around Jason. And apparently, I had been identified as the person most likely to interfere with that. I'll keep that in mind, I said. After we hung up, I sat on the bed for a long time. I could have canceled. A small part of me wanted to. But Sophie had already texted me about walking on the beach together. Ethan wanted me to bring the deck of cards David had taught him to play with. And despite everything, I wanted time with Lauren. Relationships rarely collapse because of one terrible moment. Usually they wear thin gradually. A dismissive comment, a missed phone call, an invitation that feels obligatory. A joke that isn't really a joke. Then one day, you look at someone you love and wonder when you stopped knowing how to speak to each other. I didn't want that to happen to us, so I finished packing. That evening, Sophie called. Grandma, Mom says you're bringing those cards. I am. Good. Grandpa taught you gin rummy, right? Your grandfather cheated at gin rummy. She laughed. Mom says he didn't. Your mother was 8. She was an unreliable witness. For 10 minutes. Sophie and I talked about the trip. Then she said something that caught my attention. Mom is really excited about showing everybody the house. Everybody. Yeah. The Parkers and the Whitmans. I knew the names vaguely. They were friends of Lauren and Jason. I didn't realize they were coming. Only for part of it, I think. Your mother mentioned Jason might have people over Friday. Oh, that's different. I straightened. How Sophie hesitated. I don't know. Business people, maybe? Before I could ask more, Lauren called from somewhere behind her. Sophie, homework. I have to go, Grandma. All right, sweetheart. Love you. I love you too. The line disconnected. I opened the vacation listing again. 18, Sandpiper Lane. Then out of curiosity, I searched Lauren's social media. I rarely did that. Lauren posted more than I could keep up with anyway. Restaurants, conferences, family photographs, motivational quotes about success. I found a photograph she had posted that afternoon. It was the vacation house. The caption read, "Can't wait for our coastal escape. So proud of Jason for always knowing the right people." Sometimes relationships open the best doors. Below it, someone had commented, "Jason has the best connections. How did you guys score this place?" Lauren replied, "He has friends in very good places." I read it twice. Then another comment appeared. "Is this the private house Jason mentioned?" Lauren answered. "Yes, we basically have it to ourselves. One of the perks of his network." I felt something cold settle in my chest. This wasn't simply a family vacation anymore. Lauren was presenting the house as evidence of Jason's status. I closed the page. For several minutes I considered calling her. Then I thought about the folder in my study. Morgan Family Holdings. The folder I had deliberately left unopened. This time I went downstairs. I pulled it from the cabinet and carried it to my desk. Inside were annual reports, tax documents, management statements, and correspondence from the firm that handled several investments David had left behind. Most of it meant little to me at a glance. I found an asset summary from the previous year. There were commercial properties in Virginia, 2 investment partnerships, a small retail building in North Carolina, and several lines referencing coastal real estate holdings. No street addresses, only company names and property codes. I searched for 18 Sandpiper Lane. Nothing. That should have reassured me. It didn't. David had structured investments through separate entities. The house could have been listed under a company name I didn't recognize. I picked up my phone intending to call the number on the statement. Then I stopped. Why was I investigating this? Because Lauren had bragged on social media, because Jason had said something rude, because an old house reminded me of David. I put the phone down. I didn't want suspicion to poison a family vacation before it began. So I returned the documents to the folder. But before closing it, I noticed something tucked behind the annual report. A photograph. David and me. Hilton Head. We were standing on a wooden porch, younger by almost 20 years. David had one arm around my waist and a screwdriver in his other hand. Behind us was the same blue railing from the listing. On the back in David's handwriting were 6 words. Erica finally approved the beach house. I laughed despite myself. Then my phone buzzed. It was a text from Lauren. "One more thing, Mom. Please don't tell people on the trip all those old stories about Dad. Jason's guests don't really know our family history, and I'd rather keep things light." I stared at the message. My laughter disappeared. David had been dead 4 years. Apparently even his memory had become inconvenient. I turned the photograph over again. For the first time I wondered whether I had misunderstood the purpose of this trip completely. And for the first time I decided not to ask Lauren another question. If she wanted me to go with the flow, I would. I would pack 1 suitcase. I would make no unnecessary stops. I would not complain about restaurants. I would not interfere with Jason's plans. And I certainly would not tell anyone what I suspected about 18 Sandpiper Lane. Not yet. Because sometimes when people are determined to show you exactly who they are, the wisest thing you can do is stop interrupting them. We left Raleigh at 6:12 on a Thursday morning. I remember the exact time because Lauren apologized to Jason 3 times for being 12 minutes late. Not because we had missed anything, not because traffic was bad, simply because Jason had wanted to leave at 6. I had stayed at Lauren's house the night before so we could all travel together. At 5:45, I was downstairs with my suitcase beside the front door drinking coffee, while everyone else rushed through the house looking for chargers, sunglasses, headphones, and Ethan's missing left sneaker. Nobody seemed to notice the irony. The supposedly difficult traveler was the only person ready on time. I kept that observation to myself. By 7:30, we were heading south with Jason driving Lauren beside him and me in the second row with Sophie and Ethan. I had brought exactly 1 suitcase, 1 handbag, no extra pillows, no cooler, no requests. When Jason stopped for gas near Florence, I used the restroom without being asked, and bought my own coffee. "See?" I whispered to Sophie when we returned to the SUV. "Your grandmother can travel internationally now." She covered her mouth to keep from laughing. Lauren turned around. "What nothing," Sophie said. For a moment I felt like myself again. The closer we got to Hilton Head, though the quieter I became. The landscape changed. Palmettos appeared along the roads. Live oaks stretched over driveways. The air seemed brighter somehow, and with every mile memories of David came back. I remembered one trip when we got caught in a summer storm and he insisted on pulling over because he couldn't see through the rain. I had teased him mercilessly. "Who's the difficult traveler now?" He had laughed. "I'm difficult. You're impossible. That's why the marriage works." I turned toward the window before anyone could see my expression. We reached Hilton Head shortly after noon. Jason drove through a private residential area lined with enormous homes hidden behind trees and manicured hedges. This neighborhood is insane, Sophie said. Jason smiled. Pretty nice, huh? How much are these houses? Sophie Lauren said. What, I'm curious. Jason laughed. Let's just say you don't buy one with birthday money. Then he glanced at me through the rearview mirror. Erica, wait until you see ours. Ours. I noticed the word. I said nothing. When we turned onto Sandpiper Lane, my heart began beating harder. The street looked different from my memory. Some houses had been rebuilt. Others had new landscaping or larger gates. But the curve in the road was the same. Then I saw number 18. For a moment I forgot everyone else was in the car. The house stood behind a line of seagrass and live oaks, its pale exterior reflecting the afternoon sun. The blue shutters had been replaced with a darker shade and the driveway had been widened. But it was unmistakable. David's beach house. Our beach house, he used to call it, although I had never paid much attention to the legal details. Jason pulled into the driveway. Here we are. Ethan practically exploded from the car. Pool suitcase first, Lauren shouted. The front door had a digital keypad. Jason entered a code and spread his arms dramatically when the door opened. Welcome to paradise. Everyone went inside. I remained outside for several seconds. I looked toward the porch. There it was, the railing. David had spent an entire Saturday repairing one loose section because he refused to call the maintenance company. I walked toward it and touched the wood. The paint was newer. The repair was still there. Mom Lauren was standing in the doorway. You coming? Yes. You okay? I turned toward her. For 1 second I considered telling her. I could have said your father stood right here. Instead I smiled, just admiring the house. Wait until you see inside. The renovation was extensive. The old dark floors had been replaced with pale oak. The kitchen wall had been removed, creating one enormous room facing the ocean. White cabinets reached the ceiling. A marble island sat beneath pendant lights. It was elegant, expensive, and strangely familiar. Lauren walked from room to room like a real estate agent. Outdoor kitchen, heated pool, private beach access, media room downstairs. Jason opened the refrigerator and fully stocked. Your connection arranged that too, I asked. He looked at me. Part of the service. What kind of connection is this? Lauren gave me a look. Mom, I was only asking. Jason smiled, but his expression tightened. Property management people. Friends of friends. That's generous. It's all about relationships. He said it with the confidence of someone repeating a favorite philosophy. I nodded. Relationships are important. Something in my tone must have bothered Lauren because she immediately changed the subject. Let's pick rooms. Pick was not quite the right word. Lauren had already decided. She and Jason took the master suite upstairs. It had ocean views, a fireplace, a private balcony, and a bathroom nearly as large as my first apartment. The kids can take the rooms across the hall, Lauren said. Sophie looked at me. What about Grandma? There's a perfect room downstairs. Perfect. That word should have warned me. Lauren led me through the kitchen, past the pantry, and down a short hallway beside the laundry room. The bedroom was pleasant enough. It had a queen bed, one small window, a dresser, and a bathroom across the hall, but it was clearly the smallest bedroom in the house. I had seen at least 2 empty guest rooms upstairs. This will be easier for you, Lauren said. Easier? No stairs. I looked at her. I have stairs at home. I know, but we'll be going up and down constantly. So, she smiled with exaggerated patience. Mom, I'm trying to make you comfortable. Sophie appeared behind her. Grandma can have my room if she wants. Mine has the balcony. No, Lauren said immediately. It's fine, I said. Sophie frowned. Are you sure? I'm sure. Lauren placed a hand on my suitcase. See, perfect. I looked at my daughter. She genuinely believed she was being considerate. That was the strangest part. She had reduced me to the person who should be placed closest to the laundry room and called it kindness. Thank you, I said. After unpacking, I wandered through the house alone. Everyone else had gone outside to inspect the pool. I wasn't snooping. At least I didn't think I was. I was remembering. Near the dining room stood a tall antique clock. I stopped. It was darker than I remembered, but there was no mistaking it. David had bought that clock at an estate sale outside Charleston. I hated it. He loved it. It has character, he told me. It has termites. It does not have termites. It looks like termites would enjoy it. He bought it anyway. And now, nearly 20 years later, it stood in the same corner. I touched the wooden case. Why would it still be here if the property had been sold? Furniture could be included in a sale. That was possible. But the coincidence unsettled me. I continued toward the back doors. Outside, Ethan jumped into the pool while Lauren yelled about sunscreen. I stepped onto the deck. The ocean breeze hit my face. For a moment I closed my eyes. David. I could almost hear him. Then I noticed something on the railing. A small mark near the bottom corner. I bent down. 3 letters had been carved into the wood. D+E. I laughed softly. I had forgotten about that. David carved them after finishing his repair. I had called him a teenager. He had kissed me and said, "Then I'm aging extremely well." My fingers traced the letters. Grandma Sophie stood behind me. "What are you looking at?" I straightened. "Nothing." She crouched. D+E. "Yes." "Who's D?" I looked toward the ocean. "Your grandfather." Her eyes widened. "Grandpa was here." Before I could answer, Lauren called from the pool. "Sophie." Sophie glanced back. "Coming." Then she looked at me again. "Grandpa carved that, I think so. But why? That's a story for another time." She ran back toward the pool. I remained beside the railing. Later that afternoon, while everyone showered, I walked upstairs. I passed the master bedroom Lauren and Jason had claimed. The door was open. The ocean filled the windows. I remembered that view. David standing barefoot on the balcony, coffee in one hand, newspaper in the other. I moved away before Lauren saw me. At the end of the hallway was a small sitting area. Against one wall stood a narrow cabinet. Something silver caught my attention. A framed photograph. Not of us. The photograph showed the house decades earlier before the renovations. But beside it sat a small brass sailboat. I picked it up. My breath caught. On the bottom was a scratch shaped like a crooked X. I knew that scratch. I had made it accidentally while packing the sailboat after one of our trips. David had laughed because I apologized to an object. I sat down slowly. The clock, the railing, the sailboat. One familiar object could survive a sail. 3 felt different. I heard footsteps and quickly returned the sailboat to its place. Lauren appeared. "There you are. I was looking around. Isn't it amazing? It certainly brings back something." She didn't notice my choice of words. "Wait until sunset." Then she smiled. "Jason really came through, didn't he?" I looked past her toward the ocean. "Yes," I said. "He certainly brought us somewhere interesting." That evening, while everyone gathered around the pool, I returned briefly to my room. I took out my phone. I still had the number for the firm that managed Morgan Family Holdings. My thumb hovered over it. I could have ended the mystery in 5 minutes. But I didn't call. Not yet. Because I wanted to understand something first. Not just who owned this house. I wanted to understand why my daughter seemed so determined to make everyone believe her husband had brought us here. And why in a house filled with pieces of my marriage, Lauren had decided the place I belonged was the smallest bedroom beside the laundry room. By Friday afternoon, the house no longer felt like a family vacation home. It felt like a stage. Lauren had been moving through the rooms since breakfast, rearranging flowers, straightening pillows, checking wine glasses against the light, and giving Jason instructions about the outdoor speakers. At first I assumed she was preparing for the dinner Jason had mentioned. Then 2 SUVs pulled into the driveway shortly after 3. "Who's here?" Ethan shouted from the pool. Lauren hurried toward the front door. "The Parkers and the Whitmans." I looked up from the book I had been pretending to read. I remembered Sophie mentioning them. Apparently, they weren't simply stopping by. They had luggage. Mark and Denise Parker arrived first. They were around Lauren's age, friendly, and polished, the sort of couple who looked as though they had stepped out of a country club advertisement. Mark worked in commercial real estate. Denise owned an interior design business. Behind them came Todd and Melissa Whitman. Todd was an attorney, and Melissa worked in pharmaceutical sales. I had met both couples once before at Lauren's Christmas party. Lauren hugged everyone dramatically. Welcome to paradise. Denise stepped inside and stared toward the ocean. Oh my God, Lauren. I told you, this place is incredible. Jason appeared with a bottle of champagne. Not bad for a phone call, right? Everyone laughed. I watched from the living room. Not bad for a phone call. There it was again, the performance. Lauren noticed me. Oh, and you remember my mom. Denise smiled warmly. Of course. Erica, right. That's right. She hugged me. It's good to see you. You too. Then Lauren added Mom came along for the family part of the week. Came along. The phrase was small, almost harmless, but I felt it, as if I had been attached to the vacation rather than invited to it. Denise didn't seem to notice. She looked around the room again. How did you get this house? Lauren exchanged a glance with Jason. Jason has his ways. Jason raised his champagne glass. Relationships. Mark laughed. I need your relationships. You probably do. More laughter. I said nothing. Over the next 2 hours, the house filled with conversation. The Parkers took one of the upstairs guest rooms. The Whitmans took another. Nobody mentioned that I had been placed downstairs beside the laundry room because stairs were supposedly a concern. That detail interested me. Apparently, the empty upstairs rooms had never really been empty. They had been reserved for Lauren's friends. I helped Sophie prepare lemonade while Lauren arranged appetizers. At one point, I asked where she kept the serving tray. She answered without looking at me. Mom, just relax. You don't have to organize everything. I was trying to help. I know. But you always take over. I stared at her. I had asked about a tray. Nothing more. Melissa was standing nearby. She gave me an awkward smile. I'd love some help with these napkins, Erica. Of course. Lauren exhaled as if a crisis had been prevented. Later, everyone gathered outside. Jason grilled shrimp and steaks while music played from the speakers. I sat beside Denise near the pool. She was pleasant company. We talked about Richmond retirement and her 2 adult sons. Then she asked, do you travel much, some? Lauren says you're more of a homebody. I looked toward my daughter. She was laughing with Melissa near the outdoor kitchen. Does she? She said you like familiar places. I spent 3 weeks in Italy 2 years ago. Denise blinked. By yourself, with a friend for the first week. Alone for the other 2. That's wonderful. I thought so. She laughed. Well, Lauren made you sound like you needed an armed escort to leave Virginia. I smiled because she meant it as a joke. But something inside me tightened. What else has my daughter told you? Oh, nothing terrible. That phrase rarely introduces anything good. She just says you like everything planned. I worked in administration for 30 years. That explains it. And I raised Lauren. That probably required military logistics. We both laughed. At dinner, the jokes continued. Not cruelly at first. That was what made them difficult to challenge. Lauren told everyone about the time I called a restaurant before a family birthday to confirm the reservation. Twice she emphasized. The first call was to make the reservation, I said. The second was to confirm it. Mark laughed. Sounds reasonable. Thank you. Lauren shook her head. You don't understand. Mom needs to know everything in advance. Jason added. We're trying to teach her spontaneity. I looked at him. At 68. Never too late. Everyone chuckled. Then Lauren told the Thanksgiving oven story. Then the story about me checking a hotel bill because we had been charged twice for parking. You found the mistake, though, Sophie said. Lauren waved her hand. That's not the point. I looked at Sophie. What was the point? She shrugged. I don't know. Neither did I. I realized something then. Lauren had turned competence into a character flaw. If I checked a bill, I was difficult. If I remembered a reservation, I was controlling. If I asked questions, I was suspicious. If I preferred knowing plans in advance, I was inflexible. All the qualities that had helped me manage a career, a household, finances, and a family had somehow become embarrassing now that I was older. I could have challenged her. Instead, I ate my dinner. Because I wanted to see how far she would go. Eventually, Denise changed the subject. So seriously, Jason, what's the story with this house? Jason leaned back. Business relationship, owner-client. Something like that. I looked at him. Something like that. Mark whistled. Places like this rent for what, 15 grand a week more in peak season, Todd said. Lauren smiled proudly. We're barely paying anything. That's insane. Jason lifted his glass. Never underestimate the value of knowing the right people. Lauren touched his shoulder. And apparently we may be able to come back next summer. I almost dropped my fork. Really? Everyone looked at me. Lauren nodded. We were talking about making it annual. With the owner. A brief silence. Jason answered. With the people who handle things. What did they say? Lauren gave me a warning look. Mom. I'm curious. Jason shrugged. They're flexible. I leaned back. Interesting. Lauren immediately resumed talking about next summer. Maybe 2 weeks instead of 1. Maybe inviting more friends. Maybe arranging a chef for several nights. She spoke as though the house were already available to her indefinitely. I listened. And for the first time, I stopped wondering whether I should tell her about my history with the property. I began wondering why she hadn't asked enough questions herself. After dinner, everyone moved outside for drinks. I stayed behind to help clear the table. Lauren stopped me. Mom, leave it. I don't mind. The cleaning service handles it. I'm putting plates in a dishwasher. She lowered her voice. You don't have to prove you're useful. That sentence landed harder than anything else she had said. I turned slowly. Is that what you think I'm doing? Her expression changed. That came out wrong. Yes. I just mean you should relax. Then say that. She looked toward the patio. I don't want to argue. Neither do I. I walked away before my anger became visible. I needed a quiet place. Without thinking, I went to the small study near the front of the house. It had once been David's favorite room because it was the only place where he could escape the noise when friends visited. The room had been redecorated, but an old walnut desk remained beneath the window. I sat down. For a few minutes, I simply listened to the muffled laughter outside. Then I opened the center drawer looking for a pen. Inside were stationary batteries, takeout menus, and a stack of postcards. I moved them aside. Something cream-colored lay underneath. An envelope. Old, slightly yellowed. On the front were 2 handwritten letters. E.M., my initials. My heart stopped. I knew the handwriting immediately. David. I pulled out the card. There was no date. Only one sentence. For E.M., our place when the world gets too loud. I pressed my fingers to my mouth. Suddenly I could see him sitting at that desk. I remembered the day. We had been arguing about something ridiculous, probably work. I had complained that everyone always needed something from me. David disappeared for 20 minutes. Later he told me he had found the perfect place for me to hide. This room. I had forgotten. But he hadn't. And somehow after all these years the card was still here. I read the sentence again. Our place. Not Robert's place. Not a property we once visited. Our place. The question I had been avoiding was no longer something I could dismiss as nostalgia. I took a photograph of the card and carefully returned it to the drawer. Outside, I heard Lauren laughing. This is why I love Jason, she told someone. He gets access to places nobody else can. I closed my eyes. Then I took out my phone. This time I didn't hesitate. I found the number for the management firm listed in the Morgan Family Holdings documents. It was after business hours, so I didn't call. Instead, I saved it. Monday morning, I would get my answer. Until then, I would watch, I would listen, and I would let my daughter continue believing that the most important person in this house was the man who claimed he had opened the door. Because David's note had reminded me of something Lauren seemed to have forgotten. Sometimes the person sitting quietly in the corner isn't there because she has nowhere else to go. Sometimes she is simply waiting to see what people will do when they believe she has no power at all. Monday morning, I woke before everyone else. For a few seconds, lying in the small bedroom beside the laundry room, I didn't remember where I was. Then I heard the ocean. Not clearly, My room faced the side of the property, so the sound reached me softly through the walls, more like distant breathing than waves. I looked at the clock. 6:11 a.m. David had always been an early riser at the beach. Sunrise doesn't wait for lazy people, he used to say. I would pull the blanket over my head and tell him sunrise had managed perfectly well without me for several billion years. That morning, though, I got dressed and went outside. The house was silent. I crossed the deck and followed the wooden walkway through the dunes. The beach was almost empty. A man jogged near the water. Farther down, a woman walked a golden retriever. I removed my sandals and let the cold water touch my feet. For the first time since arriving, I allowed myself to think seriously about David and the house. 20 years earlier, he and his closest friend Robert Hale had begun buying property together. Nothing glamorous at first. A small warehouse outside Richmond, then a strip of commercial offices, later several vacation properties along the Carolinas. David had been cautious with money, but he understood real estate. I understood people and paperwork. That was our division of labor. You keep the world organized, he once told me. I'll keep buying buildings you think we don't need. I had laughed because it was true. The Hilton Head property came later. Robert had found it through an estate sale. The house needed renovation, but the location was extraordinary. David fell in love with it immediately. I liked it, but I never cared about ownership details. To me, it was simply somewhere we occasionally escaped. Then life became busy. Lauren went to college. My mother became ill. David and Robert expanded their investments. Eventually, I stopped keeping track of which property belonged to which partnership. After David died, that confusion became deliberate. Grief turned financial documents into something almost unbearable. Every account represented a decision he had once made. Every signature reminded me that he could no longer make another one. Our attorney, Richard Palmer, walked me through the estate carefully. Some investments had been sold, some transferred, others remained under Morgan Family Holdings. I signed where necessary and told Richard and the accountants to keep managing whatever didn't require my daily attention. I don't want to become David, I told Richard. You don't have to. I just want to know the bills are paid and nothing is on fire. That can be arranged. For 4 years that arrangement had worked. Until 18 Sandpiper Lane. At 7:30 I returned to the house. Everyone was still asleep except Sophie, who was sitting at the kitchen island eating cereal. You went somewhere the beach. By yourself, I smiled. Apparently I survived. She grinned. Don't tell Mom. She'll make you wear a tracking device. I laughed harder than I expected. At 9:15 Lauren and Jason finally came downstairs. By then I had showered, eaten breakfast, and read half the newspaper on my phone. Lauren looked at me. You're dressed already, I've been up 3 hours. Why didn't you wake us because you're on vacation? She stared at me as if the concept had never occurred to her. Jason poured coffee. What's the plan? Lauren immediately began listing activities. Bike rentals, lunch, shopping, dinner reservations. I listened. Then I said I may stay here this morning. Lauren stopped. Why? I have a phone call to make. What kind of phone call? Business? She laughed. What business? My business. Something in my answer made Jason look at me. Lauren didn't notice. Okay, she said. But don't complain later that we left you behind. I won't. By 10 the house was empty. I carried my coffee into the study. David's card was still in the drawer. For our place when the world gets too loud. I placed it beside me. Then I called the management firm. A receptionist answered. Coastal Heritage Property Management. How may I direct your call? My name is Erica Morgan. I'm calling regarding Morgan Family Holdings. There was a pause. Of course, Mrs. Morgan. One moment. That response alone changed something. She hadn't asked me to explain who I was. Soft music played for less than a minute. Then another woman answered. Mrs. Morgan. Yes, this is Susan Caldwell. The name was familiar. I searched my memory. Then I remembered seeing it on quarterly statements. You manage some of our coastal properties. I oversee the residential portfolio, yes. Our coastal properties. I looked toward the window. Susan, I have what may be an unusual question. Of course, I'm currently staying at 18 Sandpiper Lane on Hilton Head Island. Silence. Not confused silence. Surprised silence. Then Susan said, "Yes, ma'am. I need you to tell me who owns this house." Another pause. "Mrs. Morgan Family Holdings owns it." I didn't move. Completely yes. No outside partner, not anymore. My fingers tightened around the phone. "Explain." Susan spoke carefully. "The property was originally acquired through a partnership between your husband and Robert Hale. About 11 years ago, Mr. Hale wanted to liquidate several vacation assets. Your husband purchased the remaining interest through Morgan Family Holdings." I stared at David's card. So David owned the entire property through the company, yes. And after his death, control of Morgan Family Holdings transferred according to the estate documents. To whom? Susan hesitated. I almost laughed at myself. I knew the answer before she said it. "To you, Mrs. Morgan." I closed my eyes. The ocean sounded louder through the open window. Am I the controlling member? Yes. Sole controlling member. There it was. The truth. I owned the company that owned the house. The house where my daughter had assigned me the smallest bedroom because stairs might be difficult. The house Jason claimed he had obtained through his connections. The house Lauren was already planning to use again next summer. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I felt sad. Deeply, unexpectedly sad. Because David had left me something filled with memories, and I hadn't even known I still had it. "How did my family get access?" I asked. Susan paused again. "That's something I was going to ask you." My posture changed. "What do you mean we received a request several months ago?" "From whom?" "A Jason Bennett, my son-in-law." "What did he say?" "He contacted one of our booking coordinators asking about availability. He referenced the Morgan family. Did he say he represented me? Not directly according to the notes." "Then why was he given the house?" Susan explained that Sandpiper Lane was not normally rented publicly. It was occasionally used by approved guests' business associates or members connected to the ownership group. When Jason provided Lauren's married name, then explained she was Erica Morgan's daughter, the coordinator assumed the request was being made with family approval. Because of the surname and relationship, Susan said it was processed as owner-family use. I almost laughed. Jason's mysterious connection was me. He just didn't know it. Or perhaps he knew more than he had admitted. Was he charged only the standard cleaning and service costs? That explained almost free. I looked toward the kitchen. Did he ask who owned the property? Not according to the file. Did anyone tell him? I don't believe so. The ownership structure isn't something staff would normally discuss with guests. So Jason had discovered that mentioning the Morgan family opened a door. Then he had apparently decided the door opened because of him. "Susan, has he made any other requests?" She became cautious. "There have been inquiries." "What kind?" "He asked whether the property might be available again next summer." I wasn't surprised. "And he also asked about hosting private gatherings." My stomach tightened. "What gatherings?" I don't have all the details in front of me. "Can you find them?" "Yes." I waited while she typed. Then she said, "He mentioned professional dinners, possibly client entertainment." That confirmed what I had begun to suspect. Anything else? There was an inquiry about longer-term use. How long? A month, possibly more. I leaned back. Lauren had mentioned 2 weeks. Jason had apparently been thinking bigger. Did anyone approve that number? Good. Susan hesitated. "Mrs. Morgan, would you like me to restrict access?" I considered it. One sentence from me could have ended the vacation. I could have told Susan to deactivate the code. I could have walked upstairs and asked Lauren and Jason to pack. For a brief, satisfying moment, I imagined their faces. Then I thought about Sophie and Ethan. They had done nothing wrong. And beneath my anger was a more important question. How far would Lauren and Jason take this if they believed I had no authority here? "No," I said. "Leave everything as it is. All right. But from this moment forward, no future use of this property is approved without my direct authorization." "Understood." "And Susan?" "Yes, please don't contact Jason yet." Another pause. "Of course." I thanked her and ended the call. For several minutes I remained in David's study. Then I picked up his card. Our place. I finally understood what those words meant legally as well as emotionally. At 11:40, the front door opened. Lauren came in carrying shopping bags. "You missed a great morning. I'm glad you had fun." She looked toward the phone on the desk. "Did you handle your business?" "Yes." "Everything okay?" I looked at my daughter. For 1 second, I wanted to tell her everything. Instead, I smiled. "Everything is exactly where it belongs." She didn't understand. "Good." Then she turned toward the stairs. "By the way, Jason wants the house especially nice Friday night. His business dinner is more important than we realized." I watched her disappear upstairs. On the desk beside me lay David's card. In my phone was confirmation that Morgan Family Holdings owned every bedroom, every chair, every wine glass, and every inch of the land beneath Lauren's feet. But I wasn't ready to reveal it. Because now I knew who owned the house. What I still didn't know was how far my daughter was willing to push her own mother aside to impress people who didn't. And that answer, I suspected, would hurt much more. Once I knew the truth about the house, everything looked different. Not because the furniture changed, not because the ocean sounded different, because I stopped wondering whether I was imagining things. For several days, I had felt vaguely uncomfortable every time Jason talked about his connection, every time Lauren praised him for getting access to the house, every time one of their friends acted impressed by his supposed network. Now I knew exactly what had happened. The connection was me. And somehow, I was the only person in the house nobody considered important. That afternoon, I went outside and sat beneath the covered portion of the deck while Lauren and Melissa returned to the pool. Jason and Mark were near the outdoor kitchen talking quietly. I wasn't trying to listen, at least not initially. Then I heard Mark say, "If you can get access to properties like this, that changes the conversation." Jason laughed. "It's about knowing where to knock." I looked down at my book. "Does the owner have more places?" Mark asked. "Probably. Probably. Commercial too. I'm working on understanding the full picture." That sentence caught my attention. Mark lowered his voice. "There could be opportunities there." "Exactly." I turned a page I hadn't read. Suddenly, this wasn't simply Jason exaggerating how he had obtained a vacation house. He was using the appearance of access to suggest business influence, and I wanted to know how much influence he believed he had. The next morning, I called Susan again. This time, I walked down to the beach first. I didn't want anyone overhearing me. "Susan, I need to understand exactly how Jason Bennett's original request was handled." "I pulled the file after our conversation," she said. "Good. He first contacted us in February." "February?" "Yes. Lauren hadn't invited me until June. That meant Jason had been working on the house for months before I knew anything about the trip." "What did he say?" Susan read from the notes. "He asked whether family access was available for 18 Sandpiper Lane. Our coordinator asked what his relationship was to ownership. Mr. Bennett said his wife was Lauren Bennett, formerly Lauren Morgan, daughter of Erica Morgan." I stopped walking. He used my full name, yes. Then he knew the house was connected to me. Not necessarily. I waited. Susan explained that Jason had apparently found the property through an old contact database associated with one of Robert Hale's former companies. The house was listed as privately managed, with Morgan appearing in the historical ownership notes. "He may have understood there was a Morgan connection," she said, "without knowing the current structure." That distinction mattered. I didn't want to accuse Jason of something the facts didn't support. "So he used the family relationship, yes. But never asked me." "Apparently not. Did he imply I had approved the request?" "Not explicitly." Again, careful wording. Jason had been clever. He had given enough information for people to make assumptions without making a direct false statement. What happened next? Our coordinator verified the family connection through internal records. "Because you're the controlling member, your daughter qualified for family use unless restrictions had been placed on the property. And I hadn't placed any." "No. Of course I hadn't. I hadn't remembered I owned the place. So they approved it." "Yes." "Did anyone tell Jason why the confirmation would have referred to owner family use?" I stopped again. "Owner family, yes. So he received paperwork saying that, most likely." That changed things. Maybe Jason didn't know I personally controlled the company, but he certainly knew this was not some favor from a powerful business connection. He knew access came through Lauren's family, yet he had allowed everyone, including Lauren apparently, to believe otherwise. Send me copies of everything. I can do that. And you mentioned additional inquiries. Yes. What exactly has he asked for? I heard papers moving. He contacted us twice after the booking was approved. Once about future summer availability, once about private events. What did he say about the events? He asked whether owner-family guests could host professional gatherings. There was that phrase again, owner-family. And what did your office say? That occasional private gatherings were generally permitted, but commercial use required approval. Did he request commercial approval? No. He described them as personal dinners involving professional acquaintances. I almost admired the precision. Jason knew how to stand directly beside a boundary without admitting he was crossing it. Anything about long-term use? Yes. He asked whether family access could extend to 30 days, and he was told that would require authorization. From me, from the controlling member. Did he ask who that was? No. I thanked Susan. Before ending the call, I said, please continue documenting anything he requests. Of course. When I returned to the house, Lauren was sitting at the kitchen island with her laptop. Where were you walking? Again, I smiled. The beach keeps allowing me back. She didn't appreciate the joke. We're going into town for lunch. What time? She gave me a look. Then she laughed. See, that's what I mean. What you always need a time. I stared at her. You just told me we're going somewhere. I asked when. Probably around 1. Fine. She returned to her laptop. I poured water. Then I noticed what was on her screen. A photograph of the house. Not a vacation photograph. A professionally framed image showing the rear terrace pool and ocean. Across the top was a presentation title. Bennett Strategic Partnerships. Lauren closed the laptop almost immediately. What was that? I asked. Jason's work. With the house, he needed a nice background image. For what? She sighed. Mom, it's marketing. I worked for architects. I know what marketing is. I know. Then why is this house in his presentation? She closed the laptop completely. He's having a few people here Friday. You told me. It's a networking dinner. Nothing dramatic. Does he do networking dinners in other people's homes often? The question came out sharper than I intended. Lauren frowned. What is that supposed to mean? Exactly what I asked. He has permission to use the house for a vacation. Why are you suddenly interrogating everything I almost told her? Instead, I looked at my daughter and realized she might genuinely believe Jason's version of events. Maybe she had never seen the owner family confirmation. Maybe Jason had told her a story because he wanted to impress her too. I needed to know. How exactly did Jason get this place? Her irritation faded into pride. He has contacts through work. What contacts? I don't know every person he talks to. Did he tell you the owner was a client? Something like that? There were those words again. Something like that. Did you ever see the booking paperwork? No. Did you ask why would I? I looked at her. Because you're planning future vacations in a house you don't own, I thought. But I only said curiosity. Lauren shook her head. You always assume there's a problem. No. I ask questions before assuming there isn't one. And that is why traveling with you can be exhausting. The sentence came casually. She didn't even seem to realize how cruel it sounded. I set down my glass. All right. Mom, it's fine. I went to my room. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed. Susan had sent the documents. I opened the original request. There was Jason's name, Lauren's name, my name, and near the top in unmistakable language, property access category owner family guest. I read it twice. Then I opened the later correspondence. Jason had asked about returning next summer. He had asked about extending access. He had asked about hosting small professional dinners. And in one email he had written, given our family's relationship to the property, I expect this may become a recurring arrangement. Our family. I sat very still. Not Erica's family. Not Lauren's mother's property. Our family. Jason had taken a door opened by my name and begun behaving as if he owned the key. That evening, I watched him tell Mark about future coastal opportunities. I watched Lauren smile proudly beside him. And I understood something that made me more uncomfortable than the lie itself. Jason wasn't merely enjoying the house. He was building a story around it. A story in which he was connected, influential, trusted. A man with access to private properties and wealthy owners. And my daughter was helping him tell it. Friday's dinner suddenly mattered much more. Later, as I passed the kitchen, I heard Lauren say, "This could really help him. Jason says these people need to see we operate at a certain level." Then Jason replied, "Once they're here, the house does half the talking." I stopped in the hallway. Neither of them saw me. Lauren asked, "And next summer?" Jason laughed softly. "If Friday goes well, next summer might be the least interesting thing we get out of this connection." I walked quietly back toward my room. For the first time, I wondered whether Jason had any intention of discovering who truly owned 18 Sandpiper Lane. Perhaps he preferred not knowing, because as long as the owner remained invisible, he could make that person as powerful, connected, and useful as his story required. What Jason didn't understand was that the invisible owner was sleeping 20 feet from the washing machine, and I was beginning to pay very close attention. The argument that finally changed the vacation began with Ethan falling asleep over a plate of pancakes. It was Thursday morning, the day before Jason's networking dinner. Lauren had planned what she called our full island day. Breakfast at 8, bike rentals at 9, a guided nature tour before noon, lunch at 1, shopping afterward, back to the house by 5, dinner reservation at 7:30. I knew the schedule because Lauren had sent it to everyone the night before. The irony was becoming almost funny. My daughter had spent days criticizing me for liking plans, yet she had organized our vacation in 15-minute increments. At 8:20, Ethan was sitting at the kitchen island with his cheek resting against one hand. He had dark circles beneath his eyes. "Sweetheart," I said, "are you feeling okay?" He nodded, then yawned so hard his eyes watered. Lauren was filling water bottles. He stayed up too late watching movies with Sophie. "I went to bed at 10, Ethan mumbled. Sophie looked up. "He's been tired all week." Lauren zipped a tote bag. "He'll wake up once we get outside." Ethan pushed his pancakes away. "I don't want to bike. You love biking. Not today." Lauren stopped. "We already reserved them." I watched Ethan's face. He wasn't throwing a tantrum. He looked exhausted. "What if he stayed here this morning?" I asked. Lauren turned toward me. "With who? With me? You're coming with us." "I don't need to." Her expression tightened. Mom, we planned this as a family day. Then let him rest for an hour and we can meet you later. We're not rearranging everything. I'm not asking everyone to rearrange anything." Jason entered the kitchen. "What's happening?" "Nothing," Lauren said. Ethan whispered, "I'm tired." Jason looked at him. "You can sleep when you're 70. I raised an eyebrow. "Apparently even then people schedule bike rides for you." Sophie laughed. Jason did too. Lauren didn't. "Mom. It was a joke. You always do this. Do what? Question the plan." I looked at the printed itinerary lying on the counter. "You spent half the week telling me to go with the flow. That's not the same thing." "No, no." Ethan yawned again. I lowered my voice. "Lauren, look at him." "I am looking at him. He's exhausted. He's 10. 10-year-olds get tired." She stared at me. Then she said, "Fine. We'll skip the nature tour." "That isn't what I suggested." "Well, now everyone has to change plans." I felt my patience slipping. Nobody has to change anything. I offered to stay with him. "And then Sophie will want to stay." Sophie immediately said I don't. Lauren looked at her. "Thank you." The room became quiet. Ethan stared at his plate. I hated that. Children always know when adults are arguing because of them, even when we pretend otherwise. So I smiled at him. "Forget I said anything. Go get your shoes." He slid off the stool. As he passed me, he whispered, "Thanks, Grandma." That was enough to break my heart a little. We went biking. Ethan lasted 40 minutes before asking to stop. By lunch, he was cranky. By 2, Sophie had a headache. At 3:30, even Jason suggested returning to the house. Lauren agreed reluctantly. Back at Sandpiper Lane, Ethan fell asleep on the sofa before removing his shoes. I covered him with a blanket. Lauren watched me. You were right. I turned. I wasn't trying to be right. She crossed her arms. You never are. What does that mean? You always say you're helping, but somehow everyone ends up doing what you wanted. I stared at her. Your son was tired. I know. Then what exactly are we arguing about we're not? She walked away. That should have been the end of it. It wasn't. At 6, Ethan was still sleeping. Our dinner reservation was for 7:30. I found Lauren upstairs getting dressed. Maybe we should eat here tonight. She continued applying mascara. He'll wake up. He needs rest. Mom. Lauren. She put the mascara down. Please don't start. I'm not starting anything. We have reservations. They can be cancelled. That restaurant is impossible to get into. Then you and Jason go, and leave you here with the kids. I'm their grandmother, not a stranger. That's not the point. What is the point? She turned toward me. The point is that every time we travel, everything becomes complicated. I felt something inside me go still. Every time we travel, you know what I mean. No. Explain it. She sighed dramatically. You need everything adjusted. For whom? For you. I almost laughed. What has been adjusted for me this entire week? She opened her mouth. Nothing came out. So I continued. I packed one suitcase because you asked. I left when you wanted. I haven't chosen a restaurant. I haven't changed an activity. I took the smallest bedroom without complaint. I've made every unnecessary trip you scheduled. That's exactly what I'm talking about. What you keep score. I stared at my daughter. I'm responding to an accusation. You always have to defend yourself. Would you prefer I agree with something that isn't true? Her voice rose. Why does everything have to become an argument? Because you keep calling me difficult whenever I disagree with you. Lauren looked towards the hallway. Lower your voice. I'm not shouting. Everyone can hear. Then perhaps we should stop. But she didn't. Instead, she said the sentence that would stay with me long after that vacation ended. This is why next year will be different. I waited. What does that mean? She folded her arms. Next year, Jason and I are probably going to travel without you. There it was. Not quite the kitchen confrontation from later. That would come. This was the first version. The rehearsal. I swallowed. Without me. I don't mean every trip. Just this one. Maybe. The house you're already planning to use again? She hesitated. Yes. Something almost absurd passed through my mind. My daughter was informing me that I might not be invited back to my own property. I could have ended everything right there. Something almost absurd passed through my mind. My daughter was informing me that I might not be invited back to my own property. I could have ended everything right there. I could have walked downstairs, gathered everyone in the living room, opened Susan's email, and watched the truth erase that certainty from Lauren's face. Instead, I asked one question. Why? Her expression softened slightly. Because you're difficult to travel with. The words were quieter this time. That made them worse. You really believe that I love you, Mom? That wasn't my question. She looked away. You make things stressful. How you question everything. You notice everything. If something doesn't make sense, you can't just let it go. I thought about Jason's emails, the owner-family access, the professional dinners, his mysterious business connection. Perhaps Lauren had accidentally identified the quality that bothered them most. I noticed things. I see, I said. I don't want to hurt you. Then stop saying hurtful things. Her face tightened. That's unfair. No, Lauren. It's actually very simple. I walked downstairs. I didn't cry. Not then. I sat beside Ethan until he woke. We ordered pizza instead of going to the restaurant. Jason seemed irritated for approximately 10 minutes, then opened a bottle of wine and relaxed. The Parkers and Whitmans didn't care. Nobody's vacation collapsed. Later, everyone gathered outside. Lauren began talking about next summer again. Maybe June instead of July. Maybe 10 days. Maybe another couple. I listened from the edge of the group. Then Melissa asked Erica, would you come back? Before I could answer, Lauren laughed. We'll see if Mom survives this trip first. Everyone chuckled. I didn't. Lauren noticed. Oh, come on. I'm teasing. Of course. Jason raised his glass. Erica's learning to be spontaneous. I smiled. I'm learning quite a lot. Something about my answer made him uncomfortable. Good. That night I went into David's study. I took out the card again. For EM, our place when the world gets too loud. I wondered what he would have done. David had adored Lauren. He would have defended her long after she deserved defending. But he also had a line he used whenever someone mistook kindness for weakness. Never correct people too early, he would say. Sometimes you need to know what they'll do with the rope. I used to hate that expression. That night I understood it. Lauren believed I was an inconvenient guest. Jason believed my family name was a useful credential. Neither understood that every future plan they were making depended on my permission. But the house was becoming less important to me with every passing hour. Ownership could be proven with paperwork. What I needed to understand couldn't. I needed to know whether my daughter's treatment of me was simply frustration during a stressful week or whether something deeper had changed between us. And I got part of my answer the next afternoon. Lauren was speaking with Melissa in the kitchen when I approached from the hallway. She didn't know I was there. Honestly, Lauren said, next year will be easier. Melissa asked, without your mom. A pause. Then my daughter answered, yes. Not angry, not frustrated, relieved. I stepped backward before they saw me. That one word hurt more than everything else, because now I knew. Lauren wasn't afraid I might miss next summer. She was looking forward to it. I went outside and stood beside the pool, staring toward the strip of blue ocean beyond the dunes. Tomorrow night, Jason's important guests would arrive. The house would become his stage. Lauren would smile beside him. And I would apparently be expected to stay out of the way. I still had no intention of exposing them. Not yet. But I had stopped protecting them from the consequences of their own assumptions. If my daughter truly believed life would be easier when I was no longer included, I was finally willing to let her discover exactly what my absence would cost. I found Sophie sitting alone on the beach the next morning. It was Friday, the day of Jason's networking dinner, and the house had been in motion since breakfast. Lauren had ordered flowers. Jason had taken 3 business calls before 9. Someone from a catering company was expected at 4. Even Mark Parker had been recruited to help rearrange furniture on the back terrace. I had apparently become invisible. Normally that would have hurt. That morning it was useful. I walked down the boardwalk shortly after 10 and saw Sophie sitting near the dunes with her knees pulled to her chest. She was staring at the ocean. Mind if an elderly, difficult traveler joins you? She looked up. Grandma. I smiled. Too soon. She tried not to laugh. A little. I sat beside her. For a while neither of us spoke. That was one thing I loved about Sophie. She understood silence. At 15, she was already more comfortable with it than her mother had ever been. Eventually, she said, I heard you and Mom yesterday. I kept my eyes on the water. I'm sorry. Why are you sorry? You shouldn't have had to hear that. She shouldn't have said it. I turned toward her. Sophie, what, she's still your mother, I know, and whatever is happening between us isn't your responsibility. She pulled at a strand of seagrass. She's been weird this whole trip. I almost smiled. Your mother has been many things this week. Weird is one of the kinder descriptions. Sophie looked at me seriously. Are you mad at her? Yes. She seemed surprised by my honesty. Adults often think children need false answers. They usually don't. But I love her, I added. Those things can exist at the same time. Sophie nodded. Then she said, she shouldn't have put you downstairs. I looked at her. That bothered you. There were rooms upstairs, I noticed. She told me they needed them for the Parkers and Whitmans. There was confirmation of what I already suspected. Did she? Sophie nodded. I told her you could have mine. I know. She said no. I know that too. Sophie looked down. I'm sorry. I touched her shoulder. You didn't do anything. For another minute we watched the waves. Then she asked Grandma, yes, is this house Grandpa's? The question was so direct that I almost laughed. Teenagers have a way of walking straight through doors adults spend days circling. What makes you ask the letters on the railing? D plus E. She nodded. And you knew where things were. I frowned. What things? Yesterday you told Ethan the beach towels were probably in the cabinet by the back door. I had forgotten about that. And they were. Lucky guess. She gave me a look. It was pure Lauren. For 1 second I saw my daughter at 15. You're terrible at lying, Sophie said. I spent 30 years managing architects. I'm excellent at selective disclosure. She laughed. Then her expression became serious again. Mom said Grandpa used to invest in houses. Some. So did he own this one? I considered how much to tell her. Sophie was old enough to understand, but I refused to make her part of an adult conflict. Your grandfather had a connection to this house. What kind one I'm still sorting out. That wasn't technically a lie. I had sorted out the legal ownership. I had not sorted out what I intended to do with the truth. She studied me. You know more than Mom does. Probably. That's kind of scary. Only if you're your mother. She laughed again. Then something changed in her face. Grandma, tonight is really important. I gathered that. No. I mean really important. I waited. She lowered her voice though nobody was near us. Dad's been stressed about work for months. What kind of stress I don't know exactly. That matched the outline of what I knew. I wasn't going to press a teenager for financial information about her parents. Mom keeps saying tonight could change things. How? There's some investor coming. That caught my attention. An investor, I think so. Investing in Jason's company, maybe. She shrugged. I heard them arguing before we came here. About the dinner, about money. I remained quiet. Sophie immediately looked worried. I probably shouldn't have said that. You didn't tell me anything specific. Promise you won't tell Mom I said it. I won't put you in the middle. She relaxed slightly. What did you hear about tonight? Dad said, people need to see him differently. That sounded exactly like Jason. And your mother, she said the house would help. There it was. Not a suspicion anymore, a strategy. How would a house help? Sophie gave me the answer with the innocence of someone who didn't yet understand how revealing it was. Because it makes Dad look successful. I stared at the ocean. He is successful, isn't he, I guess? Then why does he need a house to prove it? She shrugged. Adults are weird. That is unfortunately true. Sophie drew circles in the sand. Then she said Mom told Ethan and me something else. I waited. She said tonight when the business people are here, we shouldn't call you Grandma. I turned slowly. What she said, just call you Erica. For several seconds the sound of the waves seemed to disappear. Why? She said she didn't want family stuff confusing people. I tried to keep my face neutral. What family stuff? I don't know. Did she say what I was supposed to be? Sophie looked uncomfortable. She said if anyone asked, you were just staying here with us. Just staying here. I felt something cold settle beneath my ribs. Did she say I wasn't her mother? No. Sophie hesitated. Not exactly. I waited. She said nobody needed our whole family history. My mind went back to Lauren's text before the trip. Please don't tell people all those old stories about Dad. At the time, I had assumed she found my memories embarrassing. Now I understood. David wasn't inconvenient because he was dead. David was inconvenient because any discussion of him might lead to questions about the Morgan family, and questions about the Morgan family might expose Jason's carefully constructed story. What exactly has your father told these people about the house? I don't know. Sophie. I really don't. She looked genuinely distressed. I just heard Dad tell Mom that the house makes it easier for people to understand his network. I thought about the presentation I had seen on Lauren's laptop. Bennett's Strategic Partnerships. The photograph of my property. He showed pictures of it. Sophie nodded. Before we came. How do you know Mom helped him pick them? That hurt. Jason exaggerating his connections was one thing. Lauren helping him build the illusion was another. Grandma, yes. Are you okay? I smiled. I will be. You look sad. I looked at my granddaughter. There was no point pretending. I am. Because of Mom partly. She moved closer. I don't think you're difficult. I swallowed. Thank you. You ask a lot of questions. So I've been told. But usually because everybody else forgot to ask them. That sentence sounded so much like David that my eyes filled before I could stop them. Sophie noticed. Oh no. I made you cry. No. I wiped beneath one eye. Your grandfather used to say something very similar. She smiled. Then he was smart. Occasionally. We sat together another 10 minutes. Before we returned to the house, I stopped her. Sophie, I need you to do something tonight. What stay out of whatever happens between your parents and me. Her eyes widened. Something's going to happen I don't know. That was true. But if it does, you are not responsible for defending me. What if Mom says something mean? I've survived 68 years. I can handle your mother. She smiled reluctantly. Okay. And call me whatever feels natural. Grandma. Good choice. When we reached the house, Lauren was standing on the deck. There you are. She looked irritated. I've been looking everywhere. We went to the beach, Sophie said. I need you upstairs. Your dress is on the bed. Sophie went inside. Lauren turned to me. Mom, about tonight. Yes, I think it would be best if we kept things simple. How simple. Jason's guests are professional contacts. They don't need personal stories. About David. About anybody. I watched her carefully. And Sophie shouldn't call me Grandma. Lauren froze. Only for half a second. But I saw it. She misunderstood. Did she? I just said we don't need to emphasize relationships tonight. My relationship to my grandchildren, Mom, please. Why? Her voice dropped. Because Jason has positioned this weekend a certain way. Finally, a small piece of truth. What way? She looked toward the house. It's complicated. Try me. Jason's guests believe he has access to certain private networks. And I interfere with that. You make everything sound sinister. I asked a question. She exhaled. Just please don't make tonight about you. There it was again. The sentence Jason had said days earlier. I looked at my daughter for a long moment. Then I smiled. Don't worry, Lauren. Her shoulders relaxed. Thank you. I have absolutely no intention of making tonight about me. And I meant it. Because I wasn't planning a confrontation. I wasn't going to expose Jason. I wasn't going to announce who owned the house. I intended to sit quietly and watch. But as Lauren walked inside, my phone vibrated. A message from Susan. Mrs. Morgan, I need to speak with you regarding a property insurance document that requires the controlling member's signature. I will be on Hilton Head this afternoon. May I stop by the house? I stared at the screen. Then I looked through the glass doors at Lauren directing workers around my kitchen. I typed one word. Yes. By 4 o'clock Friday afternoon, I barely recognized the house. The caterers had transformed the back terrace. White tablecloths covered 2 long tables overlooking the pool. Small arrangements of white flowers and greenery sat between candles and glass holders. Wine chilled in silver buckets near the outdoor kitchen. Lauren had changed clothes twice. Jason had changed shirts 3 times. I had changed nothing. I wore a simple navy dress I had packed for dinner, low heels, and the small pearl earrings David had given me on our 25th anniversary. At 4:30, Lauren found me in the kitchen. She looked me up and down. You're dressed. Yes. For tonight, that was the idea. She hesitated. I recognized that hesitation immediately. What nothing? Lauren. She glanced toward the patio. I was thinking maybe tonight would be a good opportunity for you to do something for yourself. I almost smiled. Such as, there's a lovely restaurant near the marina. I'm sure there is. You could have dinner there. By myself it might be relaxing. I stared at my daughter. For a moment I wondered whether she could hear herself. You want me to leave? I didn't say that. You suggested I eat alone somewhere else while everyone else eats here. It's not a family dinner. I understand. It's Jason's professional evening. In the vacation home where I'm staying. Her mouth tightened. Mom, this is exactly what I mean. What everything becomes personal. I nearly laughed. You're asking your mother to disappear from a house so your husband can impress strangers, and you're surprised I'm taking it personally. She lowered her voice. Please. No. Her eyes widened. No, I'm not leaving. Then maybe you could eat earlier. Lauren. What I'm not hiding in the laundry room bedroom either. That is not what I said. You haven't had to. For a second, anger flashed across her face. Then Jason entered. Everything okay? Lauren forced a smile. Fine. He looked between us. Clearly nothing looked fine. Erica, he said, tonight's going to be pretty business heavy. You might be bored. I've survived insurance seminars. I'll take my chances. He laughed nervously. Lauren didn't. I walked outside before either of them could continue. At 5:15, the first guests arrived. There were 8 of them altogether. 3 couples and 2 men Jason knew through work. I recognized none of them. Jason introduced me simply as Erica. Not Lauren's mother, not the children's grandmother, just Erica. I remembered Sophie's warning. One of the guests, a woman named Caroline, smiled warmly. And how do you know Jason? Before I could answer, Lauren appeared beside me. Erica's here with us for the week. Technically true, deliberately incomplete. Caroline nodded. What a wonderful place. It is, I said. Jason says he's known the owners for some time. I looked at my son-in-law across the terrace. Did he? Lauren touched my elbow. Mom, could you help me inside, Mom? The word escaped before she could stop it. Caroline looked from her to me. Oh, you're Lauren's mother. Yes. Lauren laughed too brightly. Of course she is. Then she guided me toward the kitchen. The moment we were alone, she whispered, What are you doing talking? You know what I mean. No, Lauren, I genuinely don't anymore. She closed her eyes. Please, just keep things light. I removed her hand from my arm. I am not responsible for maintaining whatever impression Jason has created. Her face changed. What impression, you tell me? Before she could answer, Jason called for her. I walked back outside. The evening continued. Jason was good at this sort of thing. I had to give him that. I knew how to make people feel important. He remembered details about their businesses, asked thoughtful questions, and spoke confidently without dominating every conversation. But now that I knew what to listen for, I noticed the careful language. Our access here. People we know along the coast. Private properties like this. Relationships built over years. Never a direct lie. Always an implication. At one point, a man named William asked, Is this place part of your group's portfolio? Jason smiled. Not directly. That answer was almost impressive. Almost. Then he added, But we have a strong relationship with the people behind it. I took a sip of water. The people behind it. Apparently, I had become plural. Dinner was scheduled for 7. At 6:45, the doorbell rang. Lauren was standing near the kitchen when she heard it. Who's that? Jason checked his phone. Everyone's here. Lauren opened the door. I was across the room, but I could see the woman standing outside. Late 50s, perhaps early 60s. Silver-streaked brown hair. Cream jacket. Leather portfolio beneath one arm. I knew immediately. Susan. Lauren smiled politely. Can I help you? Good evening. I'm Susan Caldwell. Lauren waited. I'm with Coastal Heritage Property Management. Jason appeared. His expression changed slightly. Is there a problem? No problem. Susan looked past them into the house. I'm here to see Mrs. Morgan. Silence. Lauren's shoulders stiffened. Who? Erica Morgan. I stood. That's me. Susan smiled with visible relief. Mrs. Morgan. I'm sorry to interrupt your evening. Every conversation in the room seemed to quiet at once. Not completely, but enough. I walked toward her. You're right on time. Lauren looked at me. You know her. We spoke earlier this week. Jason's face lost a little color. Susan opened the portfolio. I only need a signature. The insurance carrier completed the property inspection, and because of the updated coastal coverage, they require acknowledgement from the controlling member. Jason stepped closer. Could this wait? Susan looked at him politely. I'm afraid the deadline is Monday. I can sign whatever house-related paperwork you need, he said. I stared at him. So did Susan. I'm sorry I arranged the booking. Yes, Mr. Bennett, I'm aware. Then if it's just an acknowledgement, it isn't something a guest can sign. Guest. One word. I saw Jason's jaw tighten. Lauren looked from Susan to me. I don't understand. Susan, unaware of the emotional minefield beneath her feet, removed a document. It's simply the updated policy acknowledgement. Lauren stepped forward. Why does my mother need to sign it? Susan looked at me. I could have rescued Lauren. I could have said we would discuss it later. Instead, I remained silent. Susan answered naturally. Because Mrs. Morgan is the controlling member of the ownership company. Nobody spoke. Lauren blinked. The what? Susan's expression changed. She realized something was wrong. I'm sorry. I assumed Jason interrupted. What ownership company? Susan looked at me again. This time she clearly wanted permission to continue. I nodded. Morgan Family Holdings, she said. The room went completely silent. Even the conversations outside seemed to fade. Lauren stared at me. I could see her trying to assemble the pieces. Morgan, family, holdings. Jason spoke first. Wait. His voice sounded smaller than it had all evening. You're saying Erica is connected to the company that owns this place? Susan hesitated. Yes. How connected? I watched Lauren's face. All week she had told me not to ask questions. Now she desperately wanted answers. Susan handed me the document. Mrs. Morgan is the sole controlling member. Lauren gripped the edge of the kitchen island. I signed the paper. My hand did not shake. Susan checked the signature. Thank you. Then Lauren asked the question I knew was coming. Does that mean she owns this house? Susan glanced at me. I closed the portfolio for her and handed it back. Then I turned toward my daughter. Technically, I said Morgan Family Holdings owns it. Lauren stared at me. And who owns Morgan Family Holdings? I held her gaze. I do. Nobody moved. Behind Lauren, Jason looked as if someone had removed the floor beneath him. From the terrace, Mark Parker had stepped inside. He had heard enough to understand. Lauren looked around the kitchen. The marble counters, the expensive appliances, the ocean beyond the windows, then back at me. But Jason said. Her voice disappeared. I didn't finish the sentence for her. She tried again. He said his connection got us this house. I looked at Jason. He looked away. Susan quietly excused herself. I walked her to the door. Before leaving, she whispered, I'm sorry. I didn't realize. You have nothing to apologize for. When I turned back, everyone was watching me. Lauren's face was pale. Jason's confidence had vanished. And for the first time all week, nobody seemed concerned that I might make the evening about myself. Lauren approached me slowly. Mom. Yes. Why didn't you tell us? I looked at my daughter. The answer was complicated, but one part was very simple, because when we arrived, I said quietly, I didn't know yet. She frowned. And after you found out, I thought about the smallest bedroom, the jokes, the instructions, being asked to hide my relationship to my own grandchildren, being told to eat elsewhere. I looked directly into her eyes. After I found out, Lauren, I wanted to see what you would do if you believed this house belonged to someone who mattered more than I did. Her face crumpled, and suddenly the ownership of 18 Sandpiper Lane was no longer the most uncomfortable truth in the room. For several seconds after I told Lauren why I had remained silent, nobody moved. The kitchen that had been full of voices only moments earlier felt unnaturally still. Lauren stared at me as if she had never seen me before. Jason stood beside the island with one hand resting on the marble counter. Mark Parker had quietly stepped backward toward the terrace, clearly realizing he had wandered into something far more personal than a business dinner. I wished I could have disappeared, not because I was ashamed, because despite everything, Lauren was my daughter. Watching humiliation spread across her face gave me no pleasure. Mom, she finally whispered, what do you mean you didn't know? I took a slow breath. Exactly that. You own a house and didn't know I own an interest in a company your father established. The company owns several properties and investments. I don't personally manage every asset. Jason found his voice. Morgan Family Holdings. Yes. He looked toward the ocean. This house is part of that. It is. How long longer than you've been married to Lauren? His face tightened. I almost regretted the sentence. Almost. Lauren shook her head. But Dad never owned a beach house. He did. No. She said it with the certainty children sometimes carry into adulthood, the belief that if their parents never told them something, it couldn't have existed. Your father and Robert Hale originally bought this property together. Uncle Robert, he wasn't actually your uncle, but yes. Lauren sank onto a stool. I continued. They invested in several properties. Robert eventually wanted out of some of them. Your father bought his remaining interest in this one through Morgan Family Holdings. When about 11 years ago. Her eyes widened. Dad owned this entire house for 11 years through the company. And I knew he still had coastal investments. I didn't remember the details. How could you not remember something like this? That question might have angered me once. Instead, it made me tired. Because 4 years ago, your father died. Lauren stopped. I looked down at my hands. Do you remember what those first 6 months were like? Her face softened. Mom. I was signing hospital forms one week and estate documents the next. Every account had his name on it. Every lawyer wanted a decision. Every accountant needed a signature. People handed me folders while I was still waking up expecting him beside me. My voice trembled slightly. I didn't care about a beach house. The anger disappeared from Lauren's face. For a moment I saw my daughter again, instead of the woman who had spent a week pushing me aside. I'm sorry, she whispered. I nodded. So am I. Jason remained silent. I turned toward him. But I do have questions for you. His shoulders stiffened. Lauren looked at him. So do I. The guests outside had begun talking quietly again. Someone turned down the music. I glanced toward the terrace. This conversation shouldn't happen in front of your guests. Jason seemed relieved. Right, but one thing should. His relief vanished. I walked outside. Everyone looked at me. I kept my voice calm. I'm sorry for the interruption. There appears to have been some confusion about the house. Nobody spoke. Jason stood behind me. I continued. Since several of you were invited here partly through Jason's professional relationships, I think it's appropriate to clarify that this property belongs to Morgan Family Holdings, which I control. William, the man who had asked Jason about the portfolio, nodded slowly. I added, Jason and Lauren are here as family guests. Family guests. I saw Jason flinch. This home is not part of Jason's business network, and his use of it shouldn't be interpreted as a professional affiliation with the ownership company. There. No accusation. No humiliation. Just facts. Mark looked at Jason. Jason stared at the ground. Caroline smiled awkwardly. Thank you for clarifying. You're welcome. Then I said, please continue your dinner. The food smells too good to waste. A few people laughed nervously. The tension loosened slightly. I returned inside. Lauren followed. The moment we reached the study, she closed the door. Did you have to do that? I looked at her. Yes. Why? Because people were making business decisions based on something that wasn't true. Jason entered. I never told anyone I owned the house. I didn't say you did. I never said Morgan Family Holdings was my client. I didn't say that either. His jaw tightened. Then what exactly are you accusing me of? I looked at him for several seconds. I'm asking you to tell the truth. I did. Did you tell Lauren how you got access? Silence. Lauren turned toward him. Jason. He rubbed the back of his neck. I told you I had a connection. What connection? He looked at me. I answered for him. My name. Lauren frowned. When I took out my phone and opened the documents Susan had sent, Jason contacted the management company in February. He told them you were Lauren Morgan Bennett, daughter of Erica Morgan. Lauren stared at her husband. You used Mom's name, I used your family connection. You told me someone from work helped you. I said I found the property through work. That's not the same thing. No, but... And you let me tell everybody you had some special business relationship with the owner. I didn't tell you to say that. Lauren laughed once. It wasn't amusement. It was disbelief. You didn't correct me. Jason looked toward the door. I didn't know Erica owned it. That isn't the point, Lauren said. For once, she and I agreed. Jason looked at me. I knew there was some Morgan connection. I didn't know what it was. I believed that. Not because I trusted him completely, but because Susan's records supported it. So when the management company approved you as owner family, I said, what did you think that meant? He hesitated. I thought maybe David's old partnership still had some relationship with the property. And you never asked no. Why his silence answered before he did? Because asking might have ruined the story. Finally, he said the arrangement worked. Lauren stared at him. That's your answer. I got us the house. You got us my mother's house. I didn't know that. Know that his voice rose. I lifted a hand. Lower your voice. He looked at me. For once he did. Lauren sat down. Her face had gone pale again. Then she looked at me. You said you found out Monday. Yes. So you knew when we argued yesterday. Yes. You knew when I said next year we might come without you. Yes. She closed her eyes. I saw the memory hit her. All the plans. 10 days next summer. More friends. Maybe a chef. A vacation from which the actual owner might be excluded. Oh God. I didn't say anything. She looked at me. Why didn't you tell me then? Because by then, Lauren, the house wasn't the question anymore. What was you? Her eyes filled. I hated that. But I continued. I needed to know whether you treated me badly because you were stressed, or whether you genuinely believed I had become someone whose feelings didn't matter. That's not fair, isn't it? No. You gave me the smallest bedroom because your friends needed the better rooms. I thought it was easier for you. You told Sophie not to call me Grandma tonight. Lauren looked at Jason. He looked away. You asked me to leave the house for dinner. I was trying to help Jason, at my expense. Her tears spilled over. I didn't know it was your house. And there it was. The sentence neither of us could take back. I looked at her quietly. That I said is exactly the problem. Lauren covered her mouth. She understood. Finally. If this house belonged to a stranger, I continued, would it have been acceptable to treat me that way? No. If I had no money, no property, no useful connections, would I deserve less respect? No. Then why should finding out I own something change anything? She began crying, not dramatically, silently. Jason moved toward her. She pulled away. I felt no victory, only exhaustion. After a moment, Lauren asked, were you testing me? No. Then what were you doing watching? That sounds like testing. I didn't create any situation, Lauren. I didn't ask you to mock me. I didn't ask Jason to exaggerate his access. I didn't ask you to hide who I was tonight. I paused. I simply stopped correcting you. She wiped her face. Jason leaned against the desk. So what happens now? I looked at him. To the house, to everything. That depends on what you mean. He swallowed. Are you asking us to leave? I thought about Ethan sleeping upstairs after a week of swimming. Sophie sitting beside me on the beach, Lauren crying in David's study. No. Both of them looked surprised. This is still a family vacation, I said. Or at least it was supposed to be. Lauren whispered, Mom. But there will be no assumption about next summer. She nodded. And no professional events connected to this property without formal permission. Jason nodded. And no more stories about mysterious owners who owe you favors. His face reddened. Understood. I walked toward the door. Lauren stopped me. Mom. I turned. She looked broken. Why didn't Dad tell me about the house? I thought of David carving our initials into the railing. Maybe because he never thought ownership was the most interesting thing about it. Then I opened the door. Before leaving, I looked at my daughter one more time. You asked why I stayed quiet after I learned the truth. She nodded. I needed to know how you would treat me when you thought I had nothing here except a suitcase. Her face crumpled again. And now you know. I looked toward the kitchen, then toward the little hallway leading to the room she had chosen for me. Yes, I said softly. Now I know. But what none of us realized yet was that the house itself was only the first problem. Because Susan had brought more than an insurance document that evening. And before she left, she had quietly told me there were additional records concerning Jason's plans for 18 Sandpiper Lane. Records I had not seen yet. Susan called me at 8:15 the next morning. I was already awake. I had barely slept. The networking dinner had ended earlier than planned. Nobody stormed out, nobody shouted, and nobody openly accused Jason of anything. In some ways, that made the aftermath worse. People simply became polite. Very polite. The kind of politeness adults use when they have witnessed something embarrassing and want everyone to pretend they haven't. By 10:30, the guests were gone. Lauren went upstairs without saying goodnight. Jason stayed outside alone. I went to my little room beside the laundry room and stared at the ceiling until nearly 3. When Susan called, I stepped onto the deck. "Good morning," I said. "Mrs. Morgan, I'm sorry to bother you." "You're not. I wanted to follow up about something I mentioned yesterday. The additional records." "Yes." I looked toward the upstairs windows. "What records?" "Correspondence from Mr. Bennett. I've seen the requests about next summer and professional dinners. There's more." My stomach tightened. Susan explained that after our first conversation, she had asked her staff to gather every inquiry associated with Jason's email address. Some had been filed separately because they weren't reservation requests. What were they? He asked about photographing the property, for what he described it as presentation material. I closed my eyes. The photograph on Lauren's laptop. Bennett Strategic Partnerships. Did you approve it? Not for commercial advertising. But guests are allowed personal photography, obviously. What exactly did he ask? Susan read from the email. He wanted to know whether exterior and interior images could be used in what he called a private investor presentation. I gripped the railing. And what did your office say? That any use, suggesting ownership, representation, sponsorship, or commercial affiliation required written authorization. Did he receive authorization? No. Did he use the photographs anyway? We don't know. I did. I had seen them. What else? He asked whether Morgan Family Holdings was open to discussing private access arrangements for business associates. I stopped breathing for a second. Business associates? Yes. What kind of access? The inquiry was vague. Read it. Susan hesitated, then did. Mr. Bennett wrote that he was exploring whether select professional contacts might benefit from access to premium coastal properties through what he described as his extended network. Extended network. My property had become a benefit Jason might offer other people. Did he name the company? No. Did he claim to represent us? Not explicitly. There it was again. Jason's specialty. Never cross the line in writing. Just stand close enough that everyone assumes you did. Susan continued. He also asked whether other properties were held within the same ownership structure. My stomach turned. What did you tell him? Nothing specific. Our staff told him portfolio information is confidential. Good. There's one more thing. I waited. He asked whether family authorization could be established on a recurring basis without requesting approval each time. I almost laughed. Meaning permanent access, essentially. And he was told that only the controlling member could authorize that. Did he ask who the controlling member was? No. That answer fascinated me. Jason had been curious about everything except the one fact that might have ended his fantasy. Send me all of it. I already have. My phone vibrated. I thanked Susan. Then she said, Mrs. Morgan. Yes, I want to be fair. Mr. Bennett never claimed legal ownership. I know. And he never formally represented himself as an agent of Morgan Family Holdings. I understand. But the pattern concerned me after our conversation. It concerns me too. I ended the call. For 20 minutes I sat outside reading every email. Individually, none looked terrible. Together they told a story. Jason had found a door. My name opened it. Then he started checking what else might be behind it. Future vacations, longer stays, professional dinners, photography, other properties, access for associates, recurring authorization. He had not stolen anything. He had not forged my signature. He had simply begun treating a family connection as an asset he could expand. And Lauren had helped him present the illusion. I found her in the kitchen around 9. She looked exhausted. Coffee? I asked. She nodded. I poured her a cup. For a moment we stood like we had years earlier when she came home from college and stayed up too late talking with me. Then Jason entered. He stopped when he saw us. I think we need to talk, I said. Lauren's face tightened. About what Jason's emails to the management company. Jason went still. What emails? I looked at him. That isn't a good opening question. He sat down. I placed my phone on the island. I know about the photographs. Lauren looked at Jason. I know about the requests for professional gatherings, longer stays, access for business associates, and information about other properties. Lauren's face changed with each item. Jason. He rubbed his forehead. It sounds worse when you list it like that. That usually happens when facts are placed next to each other, I said. Mom. Lauren's warning tone returned automatically. Then she caught herself. I'm sorry. Jason leaned forward. I wasn't trying to take anything. I didn't say you were. I was exploring possibilities. With property you don't control. I thought there might be an opportunity. For whom? He hesitated. For everyone. No. Try again. His eyes met mine. For my business. There it was. Finally. Simple truth. Thank you. Lauren stared at him. You told me the presentation was just about lifestyle branding. It was. You used this house as an example of what he didn't answer. I did. Access. Lauren closed her eyes. Jason turned toward me. I never said I owned it. You keep saying that as though it solves the problem. Because it matters. Yes. Legally it matters. Morally not as much as you seem to think. His face hardened. What do you want me to do? I thought about the dinner guests. The easiest revenge would have been public humiliation. I could have emailed them, sent the correspondence, explained every implication Jason had encouraged. But I wasn't interested in destroying my son-in-law's career. Consequences were enough. First, you will stop using photographs of this property in business materials. He nodded. Second, you will not refer to Morgan Family Holdings, its properties, or its management relationships as part of your professional network. Another nod. Third, if anyone from last night believes you can provide access to this house or any related property, you will correct that impression. Lauren looked at me. Are you going to contact them? No. Jason seemed surprised. You're not? No. Why? Because I'm not trying to ruin you. His expression changed. For the first time, shame replaced defensiveness. But if someone asks me directly, I continued, I will tell the truth. That's fair. Yes. I looked at Lauren. And there will be no future use of this house without my direct permission. Her eyes filled again. I understand. This isn't punishment. It feels like it. I know. Then what is it? A boundary. She looked down. Jason stood. I'll remove the photographs today. Thank you. He left the kitchen. Lauren remained. After a moment she whispered, You could have destroyed him last night. I looked at her. Yes. Why didn't you? Because consequences and revenge are not the same thing? She wiped beneath one eye. I don't know if I would have been that restrained. That's something worth thinking about. Her expression tightened. So now I'm the bad person again? No. But that's what you think. I think you've behaved badly. She looked at me. There's a difference, a very important one. I reached across the island. Bad behavior can be changed. If I believed you were simply a bad person, Lauren, we wouldn't be having this conversation. She stared at my hand but didn't take it. Then she asked quietly, Were you really going to let us come back next summer before all this? I hesitated. The question opened a door I had hoped to leave closed a little longer. Yes. Her eyes lifted. Really more than that. What do you mean? I looked toward the ocean. Before David died, we had discussed what would eventually happen to certain family assets. Not in detail, but enough. And after his death, I had continued thinking about it. Your father wanted this house to stay connected to the family. Lauren's face softened. He did, yes. And you? I did too. She swallowed. What are you saying? I looked at my daughter. I'm saying that before this trip I had been considering changing my estate plan so that one day you would receive an interest in this property. Lauren went completely still. I raised a hand before she could speak. But that conversation is not happening now. Her face fell. Because of Jason, no. That surprised her. Because of you. The words hurt me as I said them, but they needed to be said. I will never use an inheritance to purchase respect from my daughter. Mom, I know you didn't know. I held her gaze. That is why this matters. She looked away. You treated me as less important when you believed I had no claim here. Finding out I own the house cannot suddenly make me worthy of consideration. Tears filled her eyes. So I ruined everything. No. Then what do you call this? A chance to understand what almost happened. She finally took my hand. Her fingers were trembling. Outside, the ocean rolled toward the shore exactly as it had when David and I first came here. The house had survived storms, renovations, changing owners, and years of neglect from me. Perhaps families could survive things too, but survival required truth, and the hardest truth was still waiting. Because Lauren was angry at Jason for using my name. Soon she would have to face the ways she had used something too. Not my property, my silence, my forgiveness, and the assumption that no matter how she treated me, her mother would always remain exactly where she had been placed. The real argument happened that afternoon. Not in front of Jason's business contacts, not beside the pool, not in the kitchen where Susan had accidentally exposed the truth. It happened in David's study with the door closed and the ocean barely visible through the narrow window. Lauren came looking for me around 2. I was sitting at the desk with David's old card in my hands. For our place when the world gets too loud. I had probably read those words 50 times since finding them. Lauren stood in the doorway. Can we talk? We are talking. You know what I mean. I placed the card on the desk. Come in. She closed the door. For several seconds she said nothing. Then she crossed her arms. You knew. I waited. You knew this house was yours and you let us keep going. I learned Monday. You could have told us Monday. Yes. You could have told me when I talked about next summer. Yes. You could have told me when I said you were difficult. Yes. Her voice rose. But you didn't. No. She stared at me. You set us up. I felt something inside me harden. No. Yes, you did. How you let us make fools of ourselves. I didn't make Jason use photographs of the house in his presentation. I'm not talking about Jason. Then what are you talking about? Me. Her voice cracked. You watched me say all those things. I did. And you knew the whole time that I was talking about coming back here without you. Yes. How could you just sit there? That question almost stunned me. How could I sit there? You knew how ridiculous it was. Lauren, I knew how cruel it was. She stopped. That's not fair. You keep saying that, because it isn't. I stood. Then tell me what part I have wrong. She opened her mouth. I didn't let her escape. Did you put me in the smallest bedroom so your friends could have the rooms upstairs? Her face changed. I thought downstairs would be easier. You had already promised the other rooms to the Parkers and Whitmans. Silence. Sophie told me. Lauren looked away. I continued. Did you repeatedly joke in front of your friends that I was difficult? I was teasing. Did you tell them I needed everything planned while handing everyone an itinerary? That's not the same. Did you tell Sophie and Ethan not to emphasize that I was their grandmother during Jason's dinner? Her eyes filled. That was about Jason's work. Did you ask me to leave the house and eat alone? I suggested a restaurant. Lauren. She closed her eyes. Yes. Did you tell me next year would be easier without me? She whispered. Yes. And yesterday when Melissa asked whether you meant without me, did you say yes? Her eyes flew open. You heard that I did. She covered her face. For several seconds, the only sound in the room was her breathing. Then she lowered her hands. I was frustrated. You sounded relieved. I didn't mean it like that. Then how did you mean it? I don't know. She turned away. I don't know, Mom. For the first time, her anger seemed to collapse under its own weight. I sat again. Lauren remained by the window. Finally, she whispered, everything has been so much pressure. Jason's work. Yes, that explains your stress. It doesn't explain how you treated me. I know. Do you? She turned. I was trying to help him. At my expense. Yes. The word surprised me. It was the first time she had admitted it without qualification. She sat in the chair across from me. I wanted the weekend to look perfect. For whom everybody? Why? She laughed bitterly. Because apparently I'm 41 years old and still terrified someone will discover my life isn't as impressive as I pretend. That was not the answer I expected. I remained quiet. She looked at her hands. Do you know what most of the women I work with are like? No. They went to private schools. Their parents belonged to clubs. They vacationed in Europe as kids. Their mothers know how to order wine without looking at the price. I almost smiled. I know how to order wine. You look at the price. Because paying $60 for a bottle that tastes like vinegar is foolish. A tiny laugh escaped her, then disappeared. I used to be proud of that. Of what? That you didn't care. Her eyes met mine. You wore the same coat for 12 years. It was a good coat. You packed sandwiches for road trips. Airport food is robbery. You drove that old Honda until the door handle fell off. It still ran. She smiled through tears. Then she said, somewhere along the way, I started being embarrassed by it. The words hurt. But I appreciated the honesty. Embarrassed by me. She nodded. Sometimes. I swallowed. That was harder to hear than anything else she had said all week. I'm sorry, she whispered. I looked toward David's card. Your father and I worked very hard so you would never have to be ashamed of where you came from. I know. Apparently we failed. No. She leaned forward. You didn't fail. I changed. I looked at her. Why I wanted people to think I belonged. Belonged where? She shook her head. I don't even know anymore. There it was. Not greed. Not exactly. Fear. The fear of being ordinary. The fear that someone else had more. The fear that simplicity looked like failure. And somehow I had become a reminder of everything Lauren had decided she needed to outgrow. I can forgive embarrassment, I said. She looked at me. What I cannot accept is disrespect. I understand. No, Lauren. I need you to really understand. I leaned forward. You are allowed to dislike my clothes. You are allowed to think I ask too many questions. You can roll your eyes when I check a restaurant bill. A weak smile touched her face. But you do not get to make me smaller so you can feel larger. Her smile disappeared. I know. And you do not get to decide I'm family when it is convenient, and an inconvenience when I might complicate the picture. I know. I reached for David's card. There's something else. What your father and I talked about this house before he died. Lauren looked at the card. He loved it here. So did I. You never acted like it. I loved him more than I loved property. She wiped her eyes. What did you talk about keeping it in the family? Her expression changed. I continued carefully. After your father died, I considered eventually transferring part of my interest in Morgan Family Holdings to you. Lauren stared at me. Part of this house? Potentially. She said nothing. I hadn't made a final decision. Are you changing it now? Yes. Her face went pale. I saw fear flash through her. Not simply financial fear, the fear that she had permanently broken something. I'm not disinheriting you, she exhaled. This isn't revenge. Then what are you changing? I'm removing assumptions. She frowned. I explained that the property would remain fully under my control. No transfer would happen simply because Lauren was my daughter. No promise of future ownership would be made until I knew she understood what stewardship meant. She stared at me. So I have to earn my inheritance? No. Then what? You have to stop expecting one. She looked down. That landed exactly where it needed to. I don't want your money, she whispered. I hope that's true. It is. Then this shouldn't change how you treat me. Her eyes filled again. It won't. I don't need promises today. What do you need? Time. She nodded. Then after a long silence she asked, do you still love me? The question broke something in me. I stood and walked around the desk. Oh, Lauren. She rose too. I put my arms around her. She began crying against my shoulder, not like the polished 41-year-old marketing director who had spent the week managing appearances, Like my daughter. I love you, I whispered. That was never the question. She held me tighter. What was whether I loved myself enough to stop accepting whatever you gave me? She pulled back. I touched her face. You are my daughter. You are not my authority. She nodded through tears. And I am your mother. That does not make me your servant, your safety net, or the person you can push aside because you assume I'll always forgive you before you apologize. I'm sorry. This time I believed she understood the words. Not everything was fixed. Not even close. But something had finally become honest. As Lauren reached for the door, she stopped. Mom. Yes. If Dad were here, what would he say? I looked at the card. Then I smiled. He'd probably ask why everyone spent a week arguing over bedrooms when there's an ocean outside. Lauren laughed through her tears. That sounded like David. She opened the door. Then she paused again. I'm going to talk to Sophie about what she saw all of this. Her voice broke slightly. And I taught my daughter how a woman should treat her mother. For the first time that week, Lauren looked genuinely ashamed of something that had nothing to do with appearances. I nodded. That conversation may matter more than the one we just had. She left. I remained in the study alone. Outside I could hear Sophie and Ethan laughing near the pool. The sound filled the house. David had wanted this place to remain connected to family. I finally understood that preserving a family property was easy. You hired managers, paid taxes, maintained the roof. Preserving a family itself was harder. It required boundaries strong enough to survive disappointment and love, strong enough to remain after the boundary was drawn. And for the first time since arriving at Hilton Head, I believed Lauren and I might still have both. Jason apologized to me the next morning. Not Lauren, not Susan, not his business contacts. Me. I was on the back deck shortly after 7 drinking coffee and watching the sky turn pale over the Atlantic when I heard the door slide open behind me. Jason stepped outside carrying 2 mugs. I brought you coffee. I looked at the mug already in my hand. He noticed. Right. For the first time since I had known him, Jason Bennett looked genuinely unsure what to do with himself. Sit down, I said. He took the chair across from me. For several moments, neither of us spoke. Then he said, I owe you an apology. Yes. He almost smiled. I guess I deserve that. You did. He looked toward the ocean. I didn't set out to lie to anyone. I believe you. That surprised him. You do. I think you discovered that my name opened a door. Then instead of asking why, you started enjoying what people assumed. His expression tightened. That's probably fair. It's exactly fair. He nodded. I've been under pressure, Lauren told me. He looked down at his hands. My company had a rough year. 2 contracts disappeared. 1 client delayed a major project. I started chasing new partnerships because I thought one big opportunity could fix everything. I listened without interrupting. I kept seeing other people get ahead because of who they knew, he continued. Not because they were better. Because they had access. And you wanted access. Yes. So you borrowed mine. He winced. When you say it like that. How else should I say it? I thought for a moment. There isn't another way. That answer earned more respect from me than every polished explanation he had offered before. I should have told Lauren exactly how the house was arranged, he said. Yes. I should never have used photographs in the presentation. Yes. And I should have corrected people when they assumed the property was connected to my business. Yes. He gave me a tired smile. You're not going to make this easy. No. Fair enough. The wind moved through the seagrass below us. Then Jason said, I removed the photographs last night. Good. I also emailed everyone from the dinner. I turned toward him. What did you say? That I needed to clarify that the property was provided through Lauren's family and has no affiliation with my company. That was more than I had demanded. Thank you. I probably lost some credibility. Possibly. But I would have lost more if someone discovered it later. Yes. He stared at the ocean. I'm embarrassed. That won't kill you. He laughed quietly. No. Sometimes embarrassment is useful. My father used to say that. Smart man. He would have liked you. I raised an eyebrow. You've been married to my daughter 16 years. Your father did know me. Jason laughed. Right. That sounded better in my head. For the first time all week, the laughter between us felt natural. Then I became serious. I'm not going to rescue your business. He looked at me. I wasn't going to ask. Good. I mean it. So do I. He nodded. If the company has problems, you solve them honestly. You don't turn family relationships into collateral. I understand. Do you? Yes. I studied him. I believed he was trying. That would have to be enough for now. When we went inside, Lauren was making breakfast. She looked exhausted. Sophie sat at the kitchen island, unusually quiet. Ethan was eating cereal as though none of us had nearly destroyed the family during the previous 48 hours. Children can be wonderfully practical that way. Lauren glanced at Jason. Did you talk? Yes, he said. And I poured more coffee. We're still related. Ethan looked up. Were you not related yesterday? Sophie laughed. Even Lauren smiled. Later that morning, Jason took Ethan fishing with Mark, who had decided to stay an extra day despite everything. Sophie went into town with Denise and Melissa. That left Lauren and me alone. She avoided me for nearly an hour. She wiped kitchen counters that were already clean, folded towels, rearranged food in the refrigerator. Finally, I said, you're going to wear out the house if you keep cleaning it. She stopped. I don't know what to say to you. You don't have to say anything. That feels worse. I waited. She sat across from me. I talked to Sophie last night. I know. She was angry with me. I know that too. Lauren looked surprised. She talked to you, no? Then how do you know? Because she loves you. Lauren looked down. She said something I can't stop thinking about. What? She asked if I would want her to treat me the way I treated you. I said nothing. Lauren's eyes filled. I couldn't answer. There was nothing I needed to add. She saw everything, Mom. Yes. She saw me put you downstairs. Yes. She heard me make jokes. Yes. She heard me tell you next year would be easier without you. Yes. Lauren covered her eyes. I thought the worst part of this whole thing was finding out the house belonged to you. I waited. It wasn't. What was? She looked at me, realizing my daughter was watching. That was the moment I knew something in Lauren had genuinely shifted. Not because she feared losing property, because she had seen herself through her child's eyes. I've spent years telling Sophie she should never let people make her feel small, Lauren said. That's good advice. And then I did exactly that to you. Yes. She flinched. I reached across the table. Lauren, I'm not going to soften the truth just because it hurts. I know. But I'm also not going to hold it over your head forever. She looked at me. How do I fix this? You don't. Her face fell. Not all at once, I added. Oh. You fix it in small pieces. How? By behaving differently. She nodded slowly. No dramatic promises. Please no. No giant apology dinner, absolutely not. She smiled faintly. What about flowers? I like flowers. That made her laugh. Then her expression became serious. There's something else I need to admit. I waited. I was ashamed of you sometimes. I remember. But I don't think it was really about you. What was it about me? She looked toward the ocean. When I started moving into different professional circles, I became obsessed with fitting in. Everybody seemed richer, more polished, more connected. And you thought I made you look ordinary. Yes. I appreciated the honesty, even though it hurt. You know what's ridiculous? What I used to admire that you didn't care about any of that. I care about some things, like restaurant bills, especially restaurant bills. She laughed. Then she became quiet again. I turned everything I admired about you into something embarrassing because I was afraid people would think I came from less. I leaned back. Lauren, your father and I were never poor. I know. We were careful. I know. There's a difference. I know that now. I smiled. You'll probably forget again when you see me using coupons. She laughed through her tears. Probably. That afternoon, something small happened. so small that nobody else would have noticed. Lauren carried my suitcase upstairs. I found her standing in the hallway outside the master bedroom. "What are you doing? You're moving." "Where?" She pointed toward the room she and Jason had been using. "Here." "No, Mom. I'm comfortable downstairs." "You hate that room." "I don't hate it. It's beside the washing machine. The washing machine has never insulted me." She laughed. Then she said, "Please." I looked at her. "This isn't about the house being mine, no." "Then why? Because I gave myself the best room without asking anyone what they wanted. That sounds like you." "I know." She smiled. "I'm working on it." I allowed her to move my suitcase, but I didn't take the master bedroom. Instead, I chose the guest room across the hall with a smaller balcony facing the dunes. Lauren didn't argue. That mattered. That evening, we all ate together outside. No business contacts, no networking, no performance, just family. Jason grilled hamburgers. Ethan dropped ketchup on his shirt. Sophie teased her father about his terrible fishing skills. Lauren asked me whether I wanted iced tea without making a joke about how particular I was. Ordinary things. Beautifully ordinary. After dinner, Sophie walked beside me toward the beach. "Mom seems different. She's thinking. Is that dangerous?" "Extremely." Sophie smiled. Then she slipped her arm through mine. Behind us, Lauren called, "Wait for me." Sophie looked at me. I looked back at my daughter. She was running barefoot across the boardwalk, laughing because the sand was hot beneath her feet. For 1 second, she looked 20 years younger, like the girl who used to climb trees in dresses. I waited for her. Healing did not arrive like justice in a courtroom. There was no dramatic announcement, no document to sign, no moment when everything became forgiven. It arrived quietly, in an apology, in a corrected email, in a suitcase carried upstairs, in a daughter asking her mother to wait. I still didn't know exactly what our relationship would look like after Hilton Head. But for the first time all week, I was no longer afraid of finding out. We left Hilton Head 2 days later. The drive back to Raleigh was nothing like the drive down. There were no rules about unnecessary stops, no reminders about packing light, no jokes about me slowing everyone down. When Ethan announced after 90 minutes that he needed a bathroom, Jason pulled into the next rest area without complaint. I caught Sophie watching me from the back seat. She raised one eyebrow. I raised mine. Neither of us said a word. We didn't need to. Lauren noticed. "What are you two doing?" "Nothing." Sophie and I answered together. For the first time in a week, Lauren laughed without tension. That was how we left the coast. Not fixed, but different. In the weeks afterward, Lauren called more often. At first, I was suspicious of it. That sounds terrible for a mother to admit, but it's true. When someone changes immediately after discovering you own something valuable, it is difficult not to wonder whether the change is connected to the discovery. Lauren seemed to understand that. She never mentioned the house. She never mentioned Morgan Family Holdings. She never asked about my estate plan. Instead, she called about ordinary things. Sophie's school, Ethan's baseball game, a recipe she remembered me making when she was little. Once she called because she had found an old photograph of David asleep in a lawn chair with a newspaper over his face. "Do you remember this?" she asked. "Of course." "Where was it taken?" I looked closely at the photograph she texted me. "Hilton Head." She became quiet. "Really?" "Yes." For a moment I expected the conversation to turn toward the property. It didn't. She simply said, "He looked happy." He was. So did you. That mattered. Jason kept his promise too. A few weeks after the trip, he called and told me he had removed every photograph of Sandpiper Lane from his company materials. He had also clarified the situation with the people who attended the dinner. His business did not collapse. The world did not end. In fact, one of the investors apparently appreciated the correction. "He told me credibility matters more when you admit something before somebody forces you to," Jason said. "Sounds like someone you should keep talking to." "I intend to." I never invested in Jason's company. I never offered him access to my properties. I never used my resources to erase the consequences of his choices. That was important. Forgiveness does not require returning someone immediately to the position from which they disappointed you. You can love people while changing what they are allowed to touch. By September, I had also met with Richard Palmer, our family attorney. I updated several estate documents. Lauren remained my primary beneficiary. She was my daughter. I loved her. One painful vacation did not erase 41 years of motherhood. But the house remained under Morgan Family Holdings. No automatic transfer, no assumption, no promise tied to a date. If Lauren eventually became responsible for it, that decision would come from trust, not guilt. And until then, 18, Sandpiper Lane remained mine to manage. I also gave Susan one permanent instruction. Nobody used the property without my direct approval. Not Lauren, not Jason, not friends, not business associates. Family access was no longer automatic. Boundaries sound harsh to people who benefited from your lack of them. I had finally stopped being afraid of that. Then in late October, Lauren called. "Are you busy next weekend?" "Depends. On what?" "Whether you're about to give me an itinerary." She laughed. "I deserved that." "You did. I was thinking we could go somewhere." My guard rose slightly. "Where Hilton Head?" I was silent. "Just us," she added quickly. "No Jason. No. No kids." "They're offended, but no." "Why?" She hesitated. "I'd like to go back with my mother, not the owner. Not the woman with the useful company, her mother." I agreed. We drove separately and met at the house on a cool Friday afternoon. The island felt completely different in autumn, quieter. The summer crowds were gone and the ocean looked darker beneath the gray-blue sky. Lauren arrived 10 minutes after me. One suitcase, no schedule. I pointed at it. "Traveling light, don't start." I laughed. She unlocked the door. Then she stopped. "No." "What?" She stepped aside. "You first. Why, it's your house." There was no bitterness in her voice, no embarrassment, just acknowledgement. I walked inside. The house smelled faintly of wood and sea air. For a moment I saw David everywhere. The clock, the study, the railing outside. But this time the memories didn't hurt quite as sharply. Lauren carried her suitcase upstairs. I followed. At the top of the staircase she stopped. "Okay. What? Which room do you want?" I smiled. "Are you assigning rooms again?" "No. Should I stay near the laundry room?" "Easier for someone my age." She covered her face. "I am never going to live that down." "Probably not." "Mom." I laughed. Then I walked toward the master bedroom. The door was open. Beyond the windows the Atlantic stretched toward the horizon. David had loved that view. I stepped onto the balcony. The wind was cold enough that I wrapped my arms around myself. Lauren joined me. "Dad used to stand here every morning." "What did he do?" "Drink terrible coffee and pretend to read the newspaper." "Why pretend?" "Because he spent most of the time staring at the ocean." Lauren smiled. "I wish I remembered this place. You were busy growing up. Did you ever think we'd come back here like this?" "Number me neither." We stood quietly. Then Lauren said, "I'm sorry." I looked at her. "We've done this part." "I know." "Then you don't need to keep apologizing." "I think I do." "You don't." She leaned against the railing. "I keep thinking about what I said." "Which part?" That you were difficult to travel with." I smiled slightly. "I can be." "No." "Lauren, I once made your father turn around because I thought he left the garage door open." "Was it open?" "No." She laughed. "Okay. Maybe a little difficult." "Thank you." Her smile faded. "But that wasn't why I wanted to exclude you." "I know. I wanted everything around me to reinforce the person I was trying to pretend I was." She looked toward the ocean. "And you reminded me where I actually came from. Is that still embarrassing?" She turned toward me. "No." I believed her. "Maybe not forever. People do not transform completely because of one painful lesson." But she meant it in that moment. And sometimes that is where change begins. That evening we ordered takeout. No reservation, no expensive restaurant, no networking. We ate seafood from cardboard containers at the kitchen island. Lauren checked the receipt. I stared at her. "What, you checked the bill?" "They charged us for 3 crab cakes. And we ordered too. I slowly smiled. Lauren pointed at me. Don't. Oh, this is wonderful. Mom, you're becoming difficult. She laughed so hard she nearly spilled her drink. Later we walked down to the beach. The air was cold. The sand was almost empty. Lauren slipped her arm through mine. Mom. Yes, if you never give me this house, I'm okay with that. I looked at her. You don't have to say that. I know. She stopped walking. I mean it. I waited. It belongs to you. Your life belongs to you. Your money belongs to you. Whatever Dad left belongs to you for as long as you want it. Her eyes filled slightly. I think somewhere along the way, I started treating everything you had as something that would eventually become ours. That happens in families. It shouldn't. No. She squeezed my hand. And I think I started treating you that way too. I frowned, like something that would always be there. Yes. That was perhaps the most honest thing she had ever said to me. I am here, I said. I know. But not because you own me. She nodded. I know that now. The next morning, I woke before sunrise. When I opened the bedroom door, Lauren was already in the hallway holding 2 mugs. Coffee. I took one. You're awake voluntarily. Don't get used to it. We walked onto the balcony. The horizon slowly turned pink. Lauren leaned against the railing. After several minutes, she said quietly, It's your house, Mom. I looked at her. She smiled. And I should have remembered it was your life, too. I didn't answer immediately. Because that was when I finally understood what David had left me. It wasn't simply property. And what happened that summer wasn't really about who owned a vacation home. The house only revealed something I had needed to see. I had spent years believing that loving my daughter meant making myself endlessly available, forgiving quickly, staying quiet, avoiding conflict, accepting small wounds because family was more important than pride. But dignity is not pride, and boundaries are not rejection. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to let someone you love become comfortable disrespecting you. Lauren and I stood together as the sun rose over the Atlantic. I no longer needed her to feel ashamed. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need her to know the value of the property beneath our feet. I only needed her to understand the value of the woman standing beside her. And finally she did. Ketuk Fan 15. I learned something from that summer that I wish I had understood much earlier in life. The people we love can become so accustomed to our kindness that they begin mistaking it for obligation. We answer every call. We forgive every careless remark. We make ourselves smaller to keep family gatherings peaceful. And sometimes without realizing it, we teach people that hurting us carries no consequence because we will always be there afterward. But love should never require you to surrender your dignity. I could have humiliated Lauren and Jason the moment I discovered the truth about the house. I could have thrown them out, exposed Jason in front of his business contacts, or used my money to remind everyone who held the power. But that would only have replaced their arrogance with mine. The lesson I needed was different. I learned that forgiveness and access are not the same thing. You can forgive someone and still change the boundaries. You can love your children without financing their choices. You can help family without allowing them to use you. And you can say no without becoming cruel. Most importantly, your value does not suddenly increase because someone discovers what you own. I was the same woman when Lauren placed me beside the laundry room as I was when Susan revealed I controlled the house. The deed changed Lauren's perception. It did not change my worth. Maybe you have someone in your life who needs to understand that too, so I'd love to know what you think. If you were in my position, would you have revealed the truth immediately, or would you have stayed quiet and watched what happened? Tell me in the comments. And if you've ever had to set a painful boundary with someone you love, share your experience. Someone reading it may need your courage today. If this story meant something to you, please like the video and subscribe for more stories about family betrayal, dignity, forgiveness, and finding the strength to stand up for yourself. And wherever you are watching from, remember this: you do not have to become less so someone else can feel like more. What happened to Erica was never truly about a beautiful vacation home money or who had the legal right to stand inside it. It was about something far more important, the difference between being loved and being valued. Sometimes the people closest to us become so familiar with our kindness that they begin to treat it as something guaranteed. We forgive quickly. We stay quiet to keep the peace. We accept the smaller room, swallow the painful joke, and tell ourselves that family matters more than our wounded feelings. But there comes a point when keeping the peace begins to cost us our self-respect. Erica did not become more valuable the moment Lauren discovered who owned the house. She was the same woman before the truth came out, a mother who had worked hard, loved deeply, survived loss, raised a daughter, and built a meaningful life. The ownership papers changed nothing about her worth. They only exposed how differently people treated her when they believed she had nothing they needed. And perhaps that is the most important lesson of all. Never measure your value by how useful you are to other people. Real love should not depend on your money, your property, your connections, or what someone expects to inherit from you someday. The people who truly love you should respect you when you have something to offer and when all you bring to the table is yourself. But Erica also teaches us something powerful about forgiveness. She could have used the truth to humiliate her daughter and destroy her son-in-law. Instead, she chose boundaries over revenge. She allowed consequences without becoming cruel. Because forgiveness does not mean pretending nothing happened. You can forgive someone and still say, "You will never treat me that way again." Sometimes protecting your dignity is not the end of a relationship. It can be the beginning of a healthier one. If this story touched something in your heart, tell me in the comments. What would you have done in Erica's place? Would you have revealed the truth immediately, or stayed quiet and watched what happened? And have you ever had to set a difficult boundary with someone you loved? Your experience may be exactly what another person reading the comments needs to hear today. And if you believe stories like this can remind us of our strength, our dignity, and the value of family relationships,